Chapter 3882. That gray fog star is a mystery. Long Yin pondered for a moment, then sighed with a complicated tone. Although it looks like an incomparably huge star, several times larger than the Dragon Realm, but I always felt that it was just a ball of air condensed from endless gray fog. Now that I think about it, I always felt that it was more like a vortex. Vortex? Ji Tianxing narrowed his eyes and asked tentatively, "Is it similar to a black hole?" Long Yin thought seriously for a moment, then shook his head and said, "There doesn't seem to be any similarities. When I was closest to that gray fog, I was only about 100,000 kilometers away. At that time, I was afraid of being discovered, so I didn't dare to release my divine sense. Otherwise, I would definitely have used my divine sense to investigate what was inside the gray fog. That gray fog was very strange. I was so close, but I didn't feel any divine power or spatial energy. I didn't feel any danger or threat from it, but those 5 god emperors and thousands of experts spent so many resources and set up a powerful array, but they still couldn't do anything to that gray fog. In short, it was too strange." Ji Tianxing thought for a moment, then asked again, "You mean to say that the 5 god emperors spent so much manpower and resources and even spent hundreds of years just to break through that fog?" "Should be." Long Yan's tone was uncertain. "At that time, I didn't have time to carefully observe it before that female god emperor discovered it. Who knows if they want to break through the fog or absorb it and refine it. If there's a chance in the future, let's make a trip there and observe properly. Maybe we'll understand." "Of course we'll go." Ji Tianxing nodded and said in a certain tone. He was very clear in his heart that for the 5 god emperors to spend hundreds of years and use countless cultivation resources, that foggy star was definitely not simple. Furthermore, that foggy star was related to the god emperor realm and was very likely the world's greatest secret and treasure. "Let's talk about this later." Long Yin collected his thoughts and said with a chuckle, "Our top priority right now is to solve the problem in front of us. Once the situation on the Crimson Dragon continent stabilizes, I'll accompany you to the outer realms to investigate." "Okay, then it's a deal." Ji Tianxing also revealed a smile and reached out to bump fists with him. "You go to the south to deal with Chief Golden Crow, and I'll go to the north to deal with Chief Lu Wu. We'll contact each other and set a time to act. You're going to deal with Lu Wu." Long Yin furrowed his brows and repeatedly waved his hand as he said, "No way, no way. Lu Wu has too many divine king powerhouses by his side. This guy is the most cunning. You should go to the south to deal with the Golden Crow. He has fewer god-king experts under him. Leave Lu Wu to me. I have a better understanding of him." Ji Tianxing waved his hand and indifferently said, "Lu Wu doesn't know that I've come and isn't on guard against me. His attention is entirely on you. Moreover, while I can focus on assassinating Lu Wu, you have to divide your attention to control the overall situation and arrange so many affairs. Most importantly, I have a supreme king-level divine artifact, and you don't. Therefore, I'll go deal with Lu Wu, and you go deal with the Golden Crow. Don't argue." Long Yin grinned. "Brother, it's true that I didn't have a supreme divine artifact in the past. But don't forget that I've been active in the outer realms for hundreds of years. Big Brother was lucky and obtained an opportunity in the Dubby Star Zone. After going through many dangers, he picked up a few fragments of ancient divine artifacts. I spent more than 300 years refining those divine artifact fragments and more than 300 stars. I already have a supreme divine artifact." As he spoke, he waved his hand and sent out a beam of fire. He took out a pair of blood-red gloves covered in dragon scales. This pair of gloves looked ancient and weathered. They were covered in dragon scales and blood patterns. The 10 fingers were as sharp as knives, and there were 6 spikes on the back of the hands. They emitted a terrifying killing intent. He put on this pair of dark red gloves and showed them to Ji Tianxing. He said with a smile, "I've named them the Blood Flame Gloves. What do you think? Aren't they very strong?" Ji Tianxing couldn't help but laugh when he saw Long Yin proudly showing off the gloves he had made. He didn't have the demeanor and dignity of an expert at all. To be honest, this name isn't domineering at all. It's better to call it the Bloody Slaughter God Fist or the flame dragon fist? Long Yin pursed his lips. The name you came up with is too vulgar. This kind of domineering-sounding name has long been used by everyone. I think the blood flame gloves are very good. It doesn't sound ostentatious and is very simple. Fine, fine, fine. In any case, it's yours. You have the final say. Ji Tianxing waved his hand and didn't argue with him about the name of the gloves. The plan remains the same. I'll deal with Lu Wu, and you deal with the Golden Crow. Long Yin immediately frowned and said with some displeasure, I've been talking for half a day, but it's all in vain? No, you're here to help me. I can't let you take the risk. Less nonsense. Give me Lu Wu's information and whereabouts. Ji Tianxing didn't want to waste words with him and directly stretched out his hand to ask for the information. Long Yin still wanted to persuade him a little more, but seeing his firm attitude, he could only give up. Brother, between the two of us, I won't say thank you. I'll remember this favor. You must be careful. Don't underestimate the enemy. After saying a few words of advice in a serious tone, Long Yin took out a few jade slips and handed them to Ji Tianxing. One of the jade slips recorded Patriarch Lu Wu's information and movements, as well as his current location. The other jade slips were communication jade slips used by the two of them to communicate and discuss the plan. All right, I'm leaving. Ji Tianxing took a few jade slips and stood up to bid farewell. He walked out of the study. Keep my information a secret for the time being, so as to avoid Lu Wu and the Golden Crow becoming vigilant. In addition, after defeating the Golden Crow, remember to ask about my son's whereabouts. Long Yin nodded without hesitation and said, Don't worry, I know what to do. Ji Tianxing waved his hand and strode out of the study, leaving behind a confident back. Long Yin stood at the door of the study, watching his figure disappear at the end of the corridor, and couldn't help but sigh. Sigh. I owed Uncle Tian Long so many favors back then, but I never had the chance to repay them. I originally wanted to repay all the favors to Long Tian, but I didn't think that before I even helped him, I would owe him such a big favor. This debt is becoming more and more difficult to settle. When will I be able to repay it? After muttering to himself, he turned and returned to the study. He quickly dealt with a few government affairs, and then ordered a few of his trusted ministers to arrange the next plan. He was going to personally head to the south to deal with the Golden Crow Patriarch. His trusted ministers needed someone to guard the divine fire grotto heaven and help him preside over the overall situation. Someone also needed to rush to the front lines to command the army and wait for his orders and movements. Just as Ji Tianxing said, Ji Tianxing was alone and could come and go as he pleased. He could deal with Lu Wu without any distractions. But he, the Crimson Dragon Emperor, was burdened with affairs and exhausted. Chapter 3883. After leaving the divine fire grotto heaven, the burial of heaven rushed north as fast as lightning. As usual, the Nine Heavens 10 Absolutes Pagoda was placed in the Sword World, while Ji Tianxing remained in the distorted space-time. He first spent several hours looking through the jade slip that Long Yin had given him to understand Patriarch Lu Wu's whereabouts. The information that Long Yin had given him was extremely detailed. Not only did it introduce Patriarch Lu Wu, but it also included his height, appearance, temperament, activities, hobbies, and common phrases. It also introduced Patriarch Lu Wu's trusted aides, family members, and every God King under his command. There were more than 150 noteworthy God Kings, and all of them had relatively detailed information. After reading through the information, Ji Tianxing had a detailed understanding of Patriarch Lu Wu and the Lu Wu race. He had never been to the Lu Wu race or seen any of the Lu Wu race's God Kings. But now, as long as one of Lu Wu's God Kings appeared in front of him, he would not be mistaken. Heavenly Rainbow Zone, Purple Cloud, Grotto Heaven. Ji Tianxing silently muttered as he used his divine sense to tell the burial of heaven where his target was. The burial of heaven continued north as he began to meditate and cultivate. In the past few years, besides cultivating the heaven-punishing divine art, he had spent most of his time in seclusion refining Patriarch Qiongqi's invincible golden body. This supreme quality king level divine artifact was not like the primal chaos bell, a divine artifact from the ancient era. At the end of the ancient era, Patriarch Xiongxi had sacrificed his life and tens of thousands of years of cultivation to use a supreme secret art to forcefully refine this divine artifact. In other words, Patriarch Xiongxi had refined himself into a divine artifact. It was said that he had even sacrificed 100 Xiongxi elites and 1,000 divine lord experts. It was precisely because of this that the golden body of Xiongxi could become a supreme quality king level divine artifact. Ji Tianxing did not know what had happened at the end of the ancient era to make Patriarch Xiongxi make such a decision. But he was sure that it had to do with the wrath of heaven and the sin race. The reason why Patriarch Xiongxi made such a huge sacrifice was most likely to protect the Xiongxi clan. However, Patriarch Xiongxi would never have expected that the Xiongxi clan would inevitably wither and decline after 30,000 years. Ji Tianxing had been cultivating in seclusion for several years, and most of his energy was spent on refining the indestructible golden body. Now, he had basically mastered the indestructible golden body, and the refining progress had reached 80%. He continued to circulate and refine it while the burial of heaven rushed to the heavenly rainbow region, and he only hoped to be able to completely control this treasure as soon as possible. The Divine Fire Cave was located in the center of the Crimson Dragon continent. The heavenly rainbow region was located in the north of the continent, and there were 13 regions between the two regions. The Sword of Burial of Heaven maintained its normal speed and deliberately concealed its whereabouts and aura. No one discovered it along the way. By the time it reached the heavenly rainbow region and approached the purple cloud grotto, 7 days had already passed. At this moment, Ji Tianxing had already been cultivating in the distorted space-time for close to a year. He had completely refined the indestructible golden body. He could control it as he wished, and he could also unleash its full power. He was now completely confident in assassinating Patriarch Lu Wu. Swish! In the middle of the night, the Sword of Burial of Heaven arrived outside the purple cloud grotto. It stopped in the pitch-black night sky, hidden in the thick, dark clouds. This place was a mountain range with a radius of 1,000,000 miles. Lush green peaks stood tall. Countless deep valleys and mountain peaks were surrounded by clouds and mist. It was an otherworldly sight. In the central region of the mountain range, there was a massive mountain peak with a radius of 5,000 miles. It was the place where the spirit chi of this mountain range gathered. This mountain peak was surrounded by endless clouds and mist, and the mountain peak was also hidden in the sea of clouds. Every day, when the sun shone, the slowly flowing clouds would turn into a purple glow, appearing especially mysterious and magnificent. As a result, this massive mountain peak, that was hundreds of thousands of feet tall, was also called Purple Cloud Peak. And the entrance to the Purple Cloud Grotto was at the peak of Purple Cloud Peak. The mountain peak hidden in the sea of clouds had been flattened by a god king expert using a divine ability. It had a radius of 200 miles. The wide flat ground was paved with green jade slabs, forming a massive plaza. In the middle of the plaza was a massive sacrificial altar. It had a radius of 5,000 miles and was thousands of feet tall. The sacrificial altar was made of countless god stones, precious jade, and formation materials. It was constantly in operation, shining with a dense divine light. Above the sacrificial altar, there was a blinding white light door that was hundreds of feet tall. That was the entrance to the Purple Cloud Grotto. Without a doubt, there were many guards around the sacrificial altar. There were more than 100 people, all of whom were upper divine lords. The two guard commanders leading them were even middle divine king experts, as expected of the number 1 faction in the Crimson Dragon continent. The number and strength of the guards are actually on par with the Divine Fire Grotto. One can imagine how many experts and experts clan leader Lu Wu has under his command. No wonder Long Yin sees him as a formidable opponent. Ji Tianxing, who was observing in the dark, could not help but sigh. With his strength and methods, It would not be difficult for him to forcefully break through the light door and enter the Purple Cloud Grotto. But it was definitely not the best choice. He waited patiently, looking for a chance to sneak into the Purple Cloud Grotto. Now that the war is imminent, the Purple Cloud Grotto will definitely not be sealed. There will definitely be many people coming in and out. He was sure of this, so he was not anxious at all. As expected, Ji Tianxing had only waited for an hour when he sensed a few experts approaching at high speed. The team came from the northeast. There were a total of 5 people. 4 of them were lower divine kings. The leader was a middle divine king of the 6th degree. Looking at the clothes and aura of the 5 divine kings, they should be the masters of a region or the leaders of a faction. The 5 of them hurried straight to the Purple Cloud Peak. The 5 of them only used 10 breaths to travel 80,000 miles and arrive at the peak of the Purple Cloud Peak. Swoosh! Swoosh! The group flew to the center of the square and stopped outside the blinding white light door. The 2 Divine King Guard commanders quickly went up to check their identities and asked for their purpose. "Who are you? Please state your purpose." Hearing the guard commander's question, the leading purple-robed divine king quickly cupped his hands and answered, "I am a master of the region. One of the 4 divine kings beside me is my assistant. The other 3 are the experts of the region, the leaders of a few major sections. We are under the orders of Patriarch Lu Wu to gather the elites under our command. There are a total of 500 experts, and they are on standby 100,000 miles away. We are here on orders to meet Patriarch Lu Wu and listen to his instructions." After stating his identity and purpose, the master of the region took out a golden token with a special shape and handed it to the guard commander. "This is the master of the region. Please take a look." The guard commander, of course, knew that the war was imminent. The Patriarch had been mobilizing troops and gathering countless experts to rush to the front line. Since he knew the identity and purpose of the other party, he naturally would not stop them. After checking the master of the region according to the rules, the guard commander ordered the grotto entrance to be opened and waved his hand to let them pass. The master of the region took back the master of the region and led the 4 divine kings to the blinding white light door. No one noticed that an invisible dust fell from the sky and stuck to the robe of a divine king. Chapter 3884. Region Lord Kong 1 and the others successfully entered Violet Cloud Grotto Heaven. Ji Tianxing, who had turned into invisible dust, also entered without anyone noticing. Back then, Ji Tianxing had used this move to infiltrate Xuanji Grotto Heaven. Unless there was a peak divine king watching from the side, no one could discover or stop him. Now that Ji Tianxing was using the same trick again, it naturally went very smoothly. Violet Cloud Grotto Heaven was very vast, more than 1,000,000 miles wide, twice the size of Divine Flame Grotto Heaven. However, this Grotto Heaven was not as magnificent and mysterious as Divine Flame Grotto Heaven. Within the vast Violet Cloud Grotto Heaven, there were mountains, rivers, grasslands, forests, and lakes. It was a beautiful sight. Needless to say, there was abundant divine power. There were about 100,000 people living here. Only 10,000 of them were disciples of the Lu Wu clan. The other 90,000 were elites selected from the various Yao clans. There were young and beautiful women from the Fox clan, the Raccoon clan, and the Wolf clan who were responsible for serving the Lu Wu clan disciples. There were powerful and tenacious experts from the Wolf clan, the Leopard clan, the Bear clan, the Tiger clan, and other such clans who were the guards and servants of Violet Cloud Grotto Heaven. There were also many capable and hard-working experts from various clans who managed the urban beast gardens within the Grotto Heaven. There were also countless craftsmen who built palaces, pavilions, formations, and weapons in the Grotto Heaven. All in all, Violet Cloud Grotto Heaven was very prosperous and prosperous. Ji Tianxing possessed the body of a divine king and followed him into the depths of the Grotto Heaven. Everything he saw and heard along the way made him feel extremely threatened. Of course, this threat was not directed at him, but at Long Yin and Divine Flame Grotto Heaven. He could see that the Lu Wu clan, which had not been punished by the heavens, had already developed to a very powerful state. Moreover, the Luwu clan was very ambitious and had schemed to increase their power in all aspects. Violet Cloud Grotto Heaven had already been made into a tightly knit kingdom with strict rules. Thus, the 36 desires of the North controlled by the Luwu clan must also be very strong and solid. If he had not come to the Crimson Dragon continent in time to help Long Yin, the outcome of this war would have been uncertain. Although I promised Long Yin that I would not kill Patriarch Lu Wu, the Lu Wu clan is very ambitious. But the Lu Wu clan was ambitious and had made ample preparations, and their schemes were far-reaching. Even if this war could be quelled, given another 10,000 years, the Lu Wu clan would dominate the Crimson Dragon continent. At that time, the Lu Wu clan would be able to easily defeat the Dragon clan and reign supreme over the other clans. If I can't dispel the ambitions of the Lu Wu clan, I'll have no choice but to kill Patriarch Lu Wu to prevent future troubles. Long Yin had his own considerations. For the sake of the big picture, he actually pleaded for mercy for the enemy. However, Ji Tianxing was not so pedantic. He only wanted to help his brother solve the crisis and hidden dangers. Whether Patriarch Lu Wu lives or dies will depend on his own choice. As this thought flashed through his mind, Ji Tianxing quietly left the God King's robe and landed in a courtyard. This was the core region of Violet Cloud Grotto, the Violet Cloud Divine Palace that the Lu Wu clan had meticulously built and lived in for tens of thousands of years. Of course, the Divine Palace was not a single palace. It was a group of more than 100 palaces and residences, each standing on top of 100 mountain peaks. After so many years, the God Kings of the various clans of the Dragon Realm are still so old-fashioned in their appreciation of architecture and architecture. The architectural styles of the various Grotto Heavens are more or less the same. They all like to move around 100 mountains and artificially create divine arrays of heaven and earth, then build palaces on top of each mountain. Just look at the Grotto Heavens of the God Realm. Their architecture and creativity are not so old-fashioned and conservative. Ji Tianxing couldn't help but complain about the layout of Violet Cloud Divine Palace. Booish. A few moments later, the invisible dust flew into the study of the courtyard, and Ji Tianxing returned to his original appearance. Of course, he still remained invisible and restrained his energy. Even though there was a God King in the study, sitting at a desk and handling official business, he did not sense Chun Chongqing's presence. This God King of the Lu Wu clan was a middle-aged man with a thin body and dark skin. He was wearing a black robe and a luxurious jade crown. There was also a token hanging from his waist. In truth, the majority of the men of the Lu Wu clan were of this build. Judging from his clothes and accessories, he was probably an elder or deacon of the Lu Wu clan and wielded considerable authority. Ji Tianxing stared at this man's back, wondering how he should deal with him. Should he kill him or cripple him? Before entering Violet Cloud Grotto, he had only wanted to deal with Patriarch Lu Wu and heavily injure him so that war could be averted. But after entering Violet Cloud Grotto, he realized that the Lu Wu clan as a whole was very powerful and had a very deep foundation. Even if he heavily injured Patriarch Lu Wu to the point where he could not recover from his seclusion for several hundred years, it would still be useless. This was because the Lu Wu clan still had its vice-patriarch, protector, and 8 elders, as well as many deacons and elites. Even without Patriarch Lu Wu, they would still start a war to seize the throne of Dragon Emperor. Thus, Ji Tianxing changed his mind. He not only wanted to deal with Patriarch Lu Wu, but also cripple the upper echelon experts of the Lu Wu clan. Any God King of the Lu Wu clan who had the authority to make decisions was on the list of targets. However, whether to kill or cripple him, it was worth considering again. Ji Tianxing silently walked up behind the black-robed man, glanced at the book on the table, and understood what was going on. This was a deacon who wielded real power and commanded several hundred elite experts. He was responsible for patrolling Violet Cloud Grotto and carrying out assassinations for the Lu Wu clan. At this moment, the deacon was dealing with scrolls and documents, all of which were battle reports sent back from the front lines. This person was currently mobilizing his experts to infiltrate Long Yin territory and capture and kidnap the common people. Since this was the case, Ji Tianqing immediately struck, his index and middle fingers forming a sword as he thrust them at the deacon's head. The deacon was frowning in thought, so he was completely unprepared for someone to sneak into his study and attack him from behind. By the time he realized the danger and sensed death approaching, it was already too late to react. Buzz, a vast and irresistible soul energy burst out of Ji Tianqing's fingers, piercing through the deacon's head and into his mind. His godhead was instantly crushed, soundlessly shattering into 16 pieces, and his sea of consciousness also became chaotic. Just like that, this second-level God King deacon died on the spot without any external wounds. Ji Tianqing pressed his palm against the deacon's head and exerted a suction force that pulled out the 16 godhead fragments. After putting the godhead fragments into his spatial ring, he silently left the study and went to the neighboring palace to find his next target. Even after he left, the deacon remained seated in front of the desk, his body stiff and motionless. Chapter 3885. In the neighboring palace, there were more than 100 god lords and one lower god king. The god lords were patrolling guards, while the god king was the guard captain. Violet Cloud Grotto had 5,000 guards. 100 people formed a team under the command of the guard captain. 1,000 people formed a camp under the command of the guard captain. Ji Tianqing did not waste time dealing with the ordinary guards. He snuck into the guard captain's secret chamber and knocked him unconscious while he was still cultivating. Not only would this captain be unconscious for half a month, his injuries were so severe that he would not be able to fight again. He would need 10 some years to recover. Ji Tianqing only needed 10 seconds to complete his mission and stealthily leave the palace without anyone noticing. He then made his way to another mountain and continued to assassinate the god kings of the Luwu race. Unfortunately, Patriarch Luwu had more than 100 god kings under his command, but only 30-some remained in Violet Cloud Grotto. Of the other 120 god kings, 80% had gone to the front lines to lead the army. The 30-some god kings left in Violet Cloud Grotto were basically logistics personnel. Although they were not fighting, they were responsible for various matters, such as providing information, intelligence, and the mobilization of soldiers and weapons for the army on the front lines. To put it simply, these 30-some god kings were very important. They were a powerful guarantee for the Luwu race to win the war. Upon discovering this, Ji Tianqing no longer felt burdened, and he began to strike again and again. In a short 4 hours, he had assassinated 23 god kings consecutively and seized their godhead fragments. Although the god kings he had assassinated were all lower and middle god kings, their godhead fragments might not contain much energy or divine Tao laws. But no matter how small a mosquito's leg was, it was still meat. If he wanted to return his peak as quickly as possible, he would not mind. The god kings on the periphery have all been cleaned up. The 10-some god kings I need to deal with are all near Violet Cloud Divine Hall. Most of them are the elders and protectors of the Luwu race. Violet Cloud Divine Hall was the core of Violet Cloud Divine Palace, and also the residence of Patriarch Luwu. The conference hall was also located there. Naturally, this place was also the most heavily guarded. Ji Tianqing flew through the air, heading for a mountain near Violet Cloud Divine Hall. He looked down from the sky and found that all the mountains were very calm. There was nothing unusual. As it turned out, no one had discovered that the god kings had been assassinated. Swish! A moment later, Ji Tianqing landed on the target mountain. He quietly avoided the guards and snuck into the depths of the palace. He quickly discovered that the god king who lived in the palace was cultivating in a secret room. This person was a purple-haired old man from the Luwu clan. His strength had reached the 8th level of the god king realm. When Ji Tianqing snuck into the secret room and saw the person's figure and face, combined with the aura of the person's divine power, he guessed the person's identity. The Grand Elder of the Luwu clan was a veteran expert who had cultivated for more than 20,000 years, and his foundation was extremely deep. This is a huge problem. We must get rid of him. This thought flashed through Ji Tianxing's mind as he quietly approached the purple-haired old man. Unexpectedly, just as he flew behind the purple-haired old man, the purple-haired old man was already on guard and hurriedly stopped his cultivation. Since the other party had already been alerted, Ji Tianxing no longer hesitated and attacked as fast as lightning. Heaven-piercing finger. Ji Tianxing circulated all his energy and thrust the index and middle fingers of his right hand at the back of the purple-haired old man's head. At the same time, the purple-haired old man opened his eyes. His dark brown pupils flashed with cold light. Without hesitation or turning his head, he used instant movement to flee toward the door of the secret room. However, Ji Tianxing's speed was even faster than his, and he stuck close to him like a shadow. The purple-haired old man raised his palms and prepared to undo the defensive divine array and open the door. Kacha! With a crisp shattering sound, Ji Tianxing's two fingers struck the back of the old man's head. The bones at the back of the old man's head shattered, and an extremely sharp divine soul energy surged into the old man's sea of consciousness and struck his godhead. Wong. The purple-haired old man felt his mind explode, and then his vision went black and he lost consciousness. In truth, his godhead had already shattered, and his sea of consciousness was in chaos. Thump! The purple-haired old man's body fell to the ground powerlessly, and he no longer made sound. Ji Tianxing pressed his palm on the old man's head and circulated his energy to absorb more than a dozen godhead fragments. He put away the godhead fragments, quietly left the secret room, and continued to rush to the next mountain peak. However, the two guards outside the door of the secret room frowned as they vaguely sensed something unusual. Something seemed to have happened just now. I heard a little too. I thought I was hallucinating. There was a fluctuation of divine power in the secret room. It disappeared in a flash, and it seemed to be very powerful. Could it be that the Grand Elder is trying to break through a bottleneck? I don't know. Should we knock on the door and ask? It's not good to disturb the Grand Elder at this time, right? But I still feel that something is wrong. What if there is something wrong? Should we try? The two guards outside the secret room discussed for a while, and then they mustered up the courage to knock on the door and ask the Grand Elder in the secret room if something was wrong. The result was obvious. The two of them knocked on the door several times, but there was no response from the secret room. The two of them found it increasingly strange and began to worry. However, the secret room was protected by a defensive divine array, so the two of them could not open it. The two of them discussed for a while more before deciding that one of them would report this matter to the vice-patriarch and have him make the decision. As for Patriarch Lu Wu, he was currently in a meeting to discuss important military matters. The two of them did not dare to disturb him. Ji Tianxing searched through 3 mountains in a row, but he discovered that there were only divine lord guards and experts in the palaces and courtyards. There were no god kings. According to the information he knew, there were 5 god kings living in these 3 mountains. 3 of them were elders of the Luwu race, and 2 were deacons. Even though some of the elders and deacons had already left Violet Cloud Grotto to lead troops on the front lines, these 3 mountains should not be empty. But there was no reason for these 3 mountains to be empty. He vaguely sensed that these elders and deacons had either been summoned by Patriarch Lu Wu for a meeting, or his assassination attempt had been exposed and these people were on guard. I hope that they've only been summoned for a meeting and haven't noticed anything strange. At the very least, I can kill a few more elders and protectors before I'm exposed. With this thought in mind, Ji Tianxing continued to rush to the other mountains and palaces. However, when he snuck into 2 more mountains, he found nothing. Confused, he took the risk of being discovered by Patriarch Lu Wu and used his divine sense to investigate the situation in Violet Cloud Divine Hall. The result was just as he expected. 10 some god kings were currently in Violet Cloud Divine Hall, discussing important military matters. There were 5 elders and 2 protectors, as well as Region Lord Kong I and the others, who were all present in the main hall. The white-haired elder seated on the throne at the head was none other than Patriarch Lu Wu. Chapter 3886. As expected, they are having a meeting. No wonder they are not in their respective residences. More than 10 God King experts have gathered together. This is going to be difficult. Ji Tianqing observed carefully and could not help but frown. Fortunately, 3 elders and a large number of deacons have been sent to the front lines to fight. Now that Purple Cloud Paradise's power was empty, Ji Tianqing's operation was so smooth. If it was like usual, with more than 60 God Kings staying in the paradise for a long time, he would definitely have to plan and be more careful. Forget it. Let's wait patiently. When they are done with the meeting, those elders and protectors will definitely disperse. At least, Region Lord Kong 1 and the 4 God Kings will leave. At that time, I will find a chance to act. With this thought in mind, Ji Tianqing made up his mind to wait patiently for an opportunity. In order to not be discovered by Patriarch Lu Wu, he prepared to withdraw his divine sense and stop investigating the situation in Purple Cloud Temple. Unexpectedly, right at this moment, a 9th-stage realm divine king expert suddenly flew over from a mountain peak far away, rushing towards the Purple Cloud Divine Palace in a hurry. It was a purple-haired old man from the Lu Wu clan. He was dressed in a noble golden robe and wore a luxurious divine crown. When Ji Tianqing saw his figure and face, he confirmed this person's identity. He was the deputy patriarch of the Lu Wu clan. The deputy patriarch's face was gloomy and his brows were filled with anger. He flew into Purple Cloud Temple in a hurry. Seeing his appearance, Ji Tianqing's heart thumped. He could not help but think, that old man is so flustered. Could it be that something big has happened at the front lines? No, Long Yin has gone to the south to deal with the Golden Crow clan leader. There shouldn't be any big movements. Then there is only one possibility. He has discovered that many God Kings have been assassinated. I have been exposed. Therefore, Ji Tianqing continued to use his divine sense to investigate the situation in Purple Cloud Temple. After the deputy patriarch rushed into the main hall, he interrupted the discussion and flew to Patriarch Lu Wu's side and transmitted something. Patriarch Lu Wu, who was also dressed in a golden robe and wearing a crown, had a confident expression on his face. After hearing the Vice Patriarch's voice transmission, his face changed on the spot. His expression and eyes became serious, and his whole body was filled with majesty and killing intent. The 10-some God Kings in the hall could sense the change in Patriarch Lu Wu's aura, and they became nervous. At this moment, Patriarch Lu Wu ordered in a low voice, "Assassins have sneaked in and assassinated several deacons. Immediately seal the grotto heaven and be on full alert. Search for the assassins." The God Kings in the hall were all trusted subordinates of Patriarch Lu Wu, so he did not hide anything and directly told them the truth. The God Kings immediately became filled with disbelief when they heard that. They could not help but cry out as they discussed with one another. What? Someone actually dared to sneak into Purple Cloud Grotto? Who dares to assassinate a deacon of my clan? Who is so audacious? Are they tired of living? The deacons who were assassinated were all at the Divine King realm, but they didn't send out any warning or distress signal. It seems that the assassin is very powerful. It must be someone from the Divine Fire Paradise. That despicable and shameless scum Long Yin actually used such a despicable method. Seeing that the crowd was still discussing, Patriarch Lu Wu ordered with a gloomy expression, "What are you standing around for? Go and pass down the order." Only then did the elders and 2 protectors come back to their senses. They hurriedly left Purple Cloud Divine Hall to pass down the order and carry out the mission. Only Region Lord Kong 1 and the 4 God Kings he had brought remained in the hall, not knowing what to do. After all, they were experts of the Region Lord Kong 1 and did not work in Purple Cloud Grotto. Even if they needed to pass down the order and search, it would not be up to them. However, Region Lord Kong 1 was extremely shrewd. He still bowed and asked, "Patriarch, what do you need us to do? Please tell us." Patriarch Lu Wu said expressionlessly, "You don't need to do anything. Just wait here for news." Region Lord Kong 1 immediately understood and bowed. "Patriarch, please be at ease. The elders and protectors are all shrewd and capable people. They will definitely be able to find the assassin very quickly. When the time comes, this subordinate will capture the assassin for you to deal with." Patriarch Lu Wu did not say anything. He only nodded in satisfaction. The hall fell into silence. Patriarch Lu Wu was indeed able to keep his composure. He closed his eyes and waited patiently for news. The vice-patriarch, however, was not so shrewd. He anxiously paced around twice before saying, "Patriarch, this old man will personally go and search." Although this old man only discovered that 4 deacons were killed, this old man has a premonition that these are not the only ones who were killed. The assassin's strength is most likely among the top god kings. Patriarch Lu Wu nodded slightly and waved his hand. You can go." The vice-patriarch did not say anything else. He quickly left the hall and flew to a distant mountain. Ji Tianxing had been observing the situation in the hall the entire time. Seeing Patriarch Lu Wu so calm, he could not help but think, this old man can keep his composure. As expected of a peak god king who has cultivated for more than 20,000 years. I'll probably have to expend some effort to deal with him later. Thinking of this, he quietly withdrew his divine sense and began to investigate the situation in the surrounding mountains. He quickly discovered that the dozens of mountains in the surrounding area had entered a state of alert. Almost all the guards had been awakened. They formed groups and flew into the sky, guarding the various mountains while paying close attention to the situation in the surroundings. There were also groups of guards, led by God King experts, rapidly searching the palaces and residences of the various mountains for the assassin. The 5 elders and 2 protectors had split up, each leading a group of elite guards as they searched the area. The vice-patriarch moved alone as well. He constantly found the corpses of God King experts from the various peaks. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing silently rushed over and continued his assassination. 30 breaths later, he flew to the peak of a mountain and silently approached an elder. He ignored the close to 100 guards behind the elder and brazenly attacked. Swish! In the seemingly calm and empty sky, a resplendent golden sword light suddenly appeared and slashed down from above the elder's head. The purple-robed elder sensed that something was wrong. Shocked, he teleported to dodge, but he failed to do so. Kaboom! With a loud explosion, the purple-robed elder was sliced into pieces by the golden sword light in front of everyone's eyes. He died without a complete corpse. The 100 or so guard were scared out of their wits as they watched the flesh and blood fly through the air, their hearts filled with fear. How was this an assassination? This was an open and honorable murder. At the same time, the elders, protectors, and guard captains who were searching the surrounding mountains also saw the gruesome death of the elder. Filled with rage, they charged over without hesitation, using all sorts of divine abilities to search for the assassin. But Ji Tianxing had already teleported away after stabbing with his sword, hiding 10,000 li away. While everyone was panicking, he killed a guard captain in one strike in the sky thousands of miles away. But this time, he was targeted by Patriarch Lu Wu, who had hurriedly rushed over. Bookhouse Reading Website. Chapter 3887. When Ji Tianxing insta-killed that elder, not only did he alarm the surrounding god kings and guards, he also alarmed Patriarch Lu Wu in Violet Cloud Divine Hall. Patriarch Lu Wu seemed very calm and composed, sitting in the hall with his eyes closed as he waited for news. But in reality, he had already released his divine sense to cover an area of 90,000 li in order to monitor his surroundings. When Ji Tianxing assassinated that elder, Patriarch Lu Wu had already begun to track his energy and instant movement away from Violet Cloud Divine Hall. But when Ji Tianxing killed another guard captain, Patriarch Lu Wu had already arrived above the mountains and was only 10,000 li away from Ji Tianxing. Patriarch Lu Wu's secret art had not been able to see through Ji Tianxing's concealment, but his divine sense had already locked onto Ji Tianxing's soul energy and determined his general location. 9 suns seal the heavens. Patriarch Lu Wu did not attack Ji Tianxing. Instead, he used a supreme technique to seal off an area of 30,000 li whoosh. Whoosh! Whoosh! With a furious roar, he unleashed his boundless divine power, and 9 dazzling suns appeared in the sky. The 9 suns fell from the sky and scattered around him. Thwish, thwish, thwish. Suddenly, divine light shot out from the sky and condensed into a huge net of light between heaven and earth. In the blink of an eye, a ceiling array was formed. The dazzling golden ceiling array suppressed an area of 30,000 li, enveloping several dozen mountains and more than 3,000 people. Although the elders, protectors, deacons, and more than 3,000 guards were unable to leave the golden array, they did not panic. However, they did not panic. They quickly gathered together and divided into more than 20 teams, vigilantly searching the surroundings. As for the thousand-some guards and god-kings outside the array, they were temporarily unable to enter. All they could do was silently pray that their patriarch could kill the assassin as quickly as possible. Audacious thief, you dare to come to Violet Cloud Cave to assassinate Tianqing? You must be tired of living. Patriarch Lu Wu stood proudly in the sky, his hands held behind his back as he angrily roared. I've already laid down the 9 suns heaven ceiling grand formation, and everything within a radius of 15,000 kilometers has been suppressed. You have nowhere to run, so surrender yourself. Patriarch Lu Wu was dignified, domineering, and extremely confident. The 3,000 guards and the many god kings were greatly reassured as they scanned the surroundings with cold gazes. In their opinion, with the Lord Patriarch personally taking action, that assassin would definitely not be able to escape. He would be captured and executed immediately. But even as Patriarch Lu Wu's voice echoed through the world, the assassin was nowhere to be seen. At this time, the deputy patriarch hurriedly flew to the patriarch's side and reported with a grave expression, "Patriarch, things are not good. A total of over 20 god kings were assassinated. Even the Grand Elder was killed. This old man opened the Great Elder's secret chamber just now and saw his corpse. He was killed in a single move. Furthermore, the guards guarding the entrance only sensed that something was amiss, but they didn't hear any sounds of fighting. This shows that the assassin is at least a 9th Heaven Realm God King." Patriarch Lu Wu immediately frowned, his face turning rather unsightly, and his eyes flashed with shock. Even the Grand Elder was unable to resist and was killed in a single move. A 9th Heaven Realm God King. Only the Blazing Dragon King by Long Yan's side has such strength. The deputy patriarch immediately frowned and asked with a heart full of doubts. But the Blazing Dragon King is the commander of the army and has always been on the front line. This old man just received news from the front line that the Blazing Dragon King is preparing for war, and I even saw his figure. Patriarch Lu Wu also frowned, and his expression turned grave as he muttered to himself, "If it's not the Blazing Dragon King, could it be that the Long Yin came personally? How could he be so daring as to sneak into Purple Cloud Grotto to assassinate our experts?" The deputy patriarch squinted his eyes, and a chilling light flashed past his eyes. He grinned coldly and said, "Hey, if it's really the Long Yin who came personally, then he's courting death. We can join forces to kill him, and this war will end. The Divine Flame Grotto will collapse on its own." Patriarch Lu Wu shook his head and said in a deep voice, "I also hope that it's true. But based on my understanding of the Long Yin, he definitely doesn't have the courage to do so. If it's not the Long Yin, then who else could it be?" The deputy patriarch was instantly confused. Just as the two of them were discussing in a low voice, at the edge of the ceiling array, above a mountain, a dazzling sword light lit up again. Swoosh! The 1,000-foot-long golden sword light struck one of the deacons like a thunderbolt. The deacon, who was at the 3rd Heaven Realm, didn't even have time to scream before he was slashed into pieces by the sword light. His blood splattered everywhere. The 20 or so guards who were closer to him were also killed by the golden dragon sword light. Inside the ceiling formation, more than 3,000 people looked at the rain of blood in the sky. They were all shocked and furious. No one could have imagined that the assassin, who had been sealed in the array and had nowhere to run, would not only not flee for his life, he would even try to assassinate them. In particular, the assassin had killed 20-some people in a single blow right in front of Patriarch Lu Wu and the 3,000-some people. This was an absolute provocation and humiliation. The assassin had lost his mind and was so arrogant that he didn't even care about the Lu Wu clan. How could the 3,000-some people accept this? All of them were burning with rage, their bodies bursting with killing intent. They wanted nothing more than to tear the assassin to pieces. However, no one could find any trace of the assassin, nor could they detect his aura. Only Patriarch Lu Wu's face grew darker and darker. He closed his eyes and circulated all the energy he had accumulated in his life, using his supreme divine ability. His spiritual sense and sixth senses were pushed to their limits. Not even a speck of dust within a radius of 30,000 li could escape his notice. He had even searched several layers of alternate dimensions to track down the assassin's aura. If he had searched a radius of 90,000 li, his perception would have been greatly reduced. 30,000 li was the range in which his perception was at its strongest. If Ji Tianxing had continued to hide and conceal his aura, he might not have been able to find him. But Ji Tianxing was not willing to waste time. While the crowd was in a frenzy, he silently moved to the air above another mountain. This was a Lu Wu clan elder. He was surrounded by nearly 100 divine lord guards, all of them seething with righteous indignation and killing intent. Burial of Heaven's Sword. While everyone was focused on Patriarch Lu Wu, Ji Tianxing decisively attacked, stabbing with his sword from 1,000 feet behind the elder. Whoosh! A pitch-black sword light, imbued with the cold energy of death, pierced through the crowd and accurately struck the elder. Under everyone's watchful eyes, the elder's body exploded and blood rained down from the sky. The tensome guards around him were also struck by the aftershocks of the burial of Heaven's Sword, their bodies obliterated. At this moment, Patriarch Lu Wu suddenly opened his eyes, which exploded with dazzling golden light. Thief! Patriarch Lu Wu angrily roared, his hands unleashing several dozen golden blades of light that shot toward Ji Tianxing. Bookhouse Reading Website. Chapter 3888. The golden blades released by Patriarch Lu Wu were all locked onto Ji Tianxing's soul. Dozens of golden light blades scattered and shot out from all directions, forming a huge sword net. Swish, swish, swish. In the next moment, the golden sword net formed by more than 70 sword lights sealed off the area within a radius of 5 kilometers, confining the space. Every sword light released a sharp sword chi, as well as a powerful spatial divine power. This was the spatial ability that Patriarch Lu Wu was most proficient in. He believed that the assassin had been sealed by the net of swords and would not be able to assassinate anyone else. Even a peak god king would not be able to escape, let alone a ninth heaven realm assassin. Reality proved that Patriarch Lu Wu's reputation was not undeserved. After killing that elder, Ji Tianxing did not have the time to escape before he was sealed by the net of swords. Even though the incomparably sharp sword chi and spatial energy could not harm him, he was still able to break through the net of swords. However, he couldn't easily break through the sword net, so naturally, he couldn't assassinate anyone else. Everyone, hear my order. Immediately form a battle array and work together to suppress the assassin and force him to reveal himself. Patriarch Lu Wu walked majestically through the air, arriving outside the net of swords as he issued the order in a dignified voice. Some of the panicked and doubtful Lu Wu clan guards and elders began to move. Not long after, more than 3,000 people surrounded the golden light sword net, forming an encirclement. 14 god kings were in the innermost circle, while more than 3,200 god lords were in the outer circle. The 5 divine kings, including Region Lord Kong I, also took out their divine weapons and stared covetously at the assassins in the sword net. Listen to this seat's order. Work together. Patriarch Lu Wu ordered, directing the 7 god kings and god lords to release their divine power and pour it into the net of swords. Instantly, The net of swords became even more dazzling, and the sword chi and divine power became even more berserk. Fortunately, this was only a net of swords formed from a divine ability and not a divine array. Even if everyone poured in their divine power, they could only double the might of the net. If it was a divine array, its might would be several times stronger, and Ji Tianxing would be in trouble. Kacha! Crack! Following a burst of golden light, the space within 5 kilometers of the sword net was sliced into pieces, emitting a series of crisp sounds. Ji Tianxing, who remained invisible, was casting a spell to break the sword net. However, his movements were obstructed, so he had no choice but to reveal himself and divert everyone's attention. Shua! In a flash of white light, Ji Tianxing appeared in the net of swords, his right hand holding the sword of burial of heaven as he indifferently stared at Patriarch Lu Wu. Patriarch Lu Wu, 14 god kings, and more than 3,000 god lords focused on him. When the crowd saw his face clearly, they were surprised and puzzled. Many people began to discuss in low voices. He's the assassin? He's so young? Is he really a 9th stage realm god king? Why does he look so unfamiliar? Is he Long Yan's subordinate? We know a lot about Long Yan and the Divine Flame Wonderland, but we have never seen this person before. As expected, everyone's attention was diverted, and even the power of the sword net was weakened. Ji Tianxing's expression did not change. His body was suffused with a sacred golden light, resisting the strangulation and suppression of the sword net. However, he was still casting a secret spell to break the golden light sword net. Patriarch Lu Wu stared at him and frowned. He asked in a low voice, "Who are you? What's your relationship with Long Yan?" Although he did not know Ji Tianxing, he still insisted that Ji Tianxing was sent by Long Yan. At this critical moment, only the Divine Flame Wonderland would take the risk and send someone to assassinate Tianxing in Purple Cloud Cave. The corners of Ji Tianxing's mouth curled into a sneer. Long Yan and I are sworn brothers. I've specially come to take your dog life. Several god kings and more than 3,000 god lords were enraged. They cursed, mocked, and ridiculed him. But Patriarch Lu Wu, the vice patriarch, and the 2 protectors all frowned and began to ponder. You're admitting it so bluntly? Patriarch Lu Wu seemed to have guessed something and sneered. But this king has never heard of Long Yan having sworn brothers. Kid, but definitely not from the Divine Flame Wonderland. You're just trying to frame Long Yan. The human heart was sometimes so strange. If Ji Tianxing had tried to hide it, Patriarch Lu Wu and the others would have believed that he was from the Divine Flame Wonderland. However, even though he admitted it without hesitation, Patriarch Lu Wu and the 2 protectors did not believe him and believed that there was a trap. Ji Tianxing was almost amused, but he did not show it on his face. He expressionlessly said, "The war is imminent, and the Lu Wu clan wants to seize the throne of Dragon Emperor. As the sworn brother of Long Yan, this king naturally has to kill all of you delusional bastards to protect my brother's throne." The sneer on Patriarch Lu Wu's face deepened. Ha ha ha, little beast. You think you can fool this king with your petty tricks? Stop pretending. You're not from the Divine Flame Wonderland. Based on what this king knows, the Golden Crow Patriarch of the South has a vast network of friends. He has a good brother who has never shown himself and has secretly helped him a lot. That scoundrel is you. When Patriarch Lu Wu's voice resounded through the sky, all the god kings and god lords fell silent. Everyone looked at Ji Tianxing and Patriarch Lu Wu in shock, wanting to hear what was going on. The vice patriarch and the 2 protectors did not change their expressions. Clearly, they already knew this secret and agreed with Patriarch Lu Wu's judgment. Ji Tianxing coldly looked at Patriarch Lu Wu and retorted, "How absurd! Everyone knows that the Golden Crow clan and the Lu Wu clan are working together to attack the Divine Flame Wonderland from the north and south. They will definitely defeat the Long Yan. The 2 clans are in a cooperative relationship. So, how could the Golden Crow Patriarch send someone to assassinate you?" Patriarch Lu Wu's expression became even more contemptuous as he mocked. Cooperative relationship? Even the yellow-haired child knows that all three sides are vying for the throne. So how could they possibly cooperate? The Golden Crow clan is the weakest, and they're always hoping that our clan and the Divine Flame Wonderland will both suffer losses so that they can reap the benefits. This is something that everyone knows. The war is imminent, but the situation is still in a stalemate. The Golden Crow clan is only putting on an act. Do they think this king doesn't know? With the Golden Crow Patriarch's scheming mind, he will definitely send someone to infiltrate Violet Cloud, Wonderland, and assassinate our God Kings and Elders to frame the Divine Flame Wonderland. This way, in my rage, this king will launch an all-out attack. At that time, our clan and the Divine Flame Wonderland will both suffer losses, and the Golden Crow clan will take the opportunity to reap the benefits. Clearly, Patriarch Lu Wu had his own plans for guarding against the Golden Crow clan this entire time. Ji Tianxing only wanted to laugh when he heard this, but he also felt that Patriarch Lu Wu's guess was not without reason. Thus, he angrily roared, "So what if your analysis is thorough? More than 20 God Kings under your command have already been killed by this king. Such heavy losses are enough to affect the war." Book Guest House. Chapter 3889. Ha! Do you think that the loss of more than 20 God Kings will change the outcome? You are too naive and underestimate the strength of our race. Patriarch Lu Wu sneered disdainfully, his body erupting with killing intent as he roared. "You have said your last words. You can die now." As he spoke, he formed a divine seal with both hands, manipulating the net of golden swords to unleash a destructive might. Swish, swish, swish. Along with a sharp piercing sound, dozens of golden sword lights slashed toward Ji Tianxing like lightning. The 7 God Kings and God Lords also pushed their divine power to the limit to increase the power of the swords. Patriarch Lu Wu was confident that even a peak God King would be severely injured by this attack. However, something unexpected happened. Just as the several dozen swords were about to strike, Ji Tianxing suddenly vanished. He caught a flaw in the movement of the sword light and instantly broke the seal of the sword net, escaping from the range of the sword net. Swish! A quarter of an instant later, he had moved 10,000 miles and appeared on one side of the encirclement. The dozens of destructive sword lights missed their target and struck a towering mountain. Rumble! With an earth-shattering boom, the towering mountain that was 3,000 feet tall was reduced to rubble by the swords, sending dust into the air. The divine palace and residence on the mountain naturally turned to dust as well. At the same time, Ji Tianxing's body glowed with golden light as he activated the invincible golden body and charged at the God Lords. The target he chose to attack was one of the weakest spots in the encirclement. There were no God King experts around, only 100-some God Lord guards. Seeing him swinging his sword at them, the guards glared at him and used all their strength to counterattack. Imperial Tyrant's Saber, Divine Ice Palm, Burning Divine Flame, Deadly 18 Swords, Wind and Rain Dragon Claw. Many of the guards used their trump cards, releasing divine light shadows that blotted out the sky and blasted towards Ji Tianxing like a torrential flood. However, Ji Tianxing didn't dodge at all. He ignored the crowd's attacks and charged forward courageously. With the invincible golden body's powerful defense, he endured all the divine arts without being injured. But when he swung his sword and unleashed sword lights that struck the crowd, blood splattered everywhere. Bam! 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 Those divine Lord Realm guards were as frail as paper under the slaying of the 5-colored sword light, instantly being ground into smithereens. Blood rained down from the sky as pieces of flesh and severed limbs flew everywhere. A few miserable howls could be heard as well. Just like that, Ji Tianxing tore a hole in the encirclement under everyone's watchful eyes and rushed out as fast as lightning. Kill him. Stop him. Don't let him escape. He must be sentenced to death and dismembered into 10,000 pieces. The elders, deacons, and guards furiously roared. There was no need for Patriarch Lu Wu to give the order. All of them erupted with their greatest speed and began to pursue Ji Tianxing. Thus, The 3,000-plus people chased after Ji Tianxing and flew into the depths of the grotto heaven like a mighty flood. Ji Tianxing was not really running away. He was baiting them into pursuing him so that he could kill them quickly. If they had stayed and formed a battle formation to deal with him, he would have been doomed, no matter how strong he was. After all, Patriarch Lu Wu and the Tinsum God Kings were not to be trifled with. Now that they were instinctively pursuing him and were unable to form a battle formation, this was the perfect opportunity for his counterattack. Sword Rain. After just 20,000 li, Ji Tianxing swung the Sword of Burial of Heaven and used his supreme killing technique. Tens of thousands of stars instantly lit up in the sky and began to rain down like a meteor shower. These were more than 40,000 giant swords made from stars, each one 10,000 feet long and terrifyingly powerful. Before the giant swords had even landed, they had already begun to unleash a savage sword intent and suppressive energy that engulfed the 3,000 guards. The nearby Patriarch Lu Wu and the Deputy Patriarch saw that the group was pursuing Ji Tianxing and immediately realized that the situation was dire. They were just about to give the order to stop the pursuit, but it was already too late. The Patriarch Lu Wu, the Deputy Patriarch, and the two protectors grimaced at the sight of the giant swords descending from the sky and the fear on the faces of the 3,000-some guards. It's over. They've been tricked. That damned scoundrel is actually so despicable. This thought flashed through their minds, and they were filled with grief and indignation. The Deputy Patriarch and the two protectors were only Tier 8 and Tier 9 God Kings, so they couldn't stop Ji Tianxing in time. Only Patriarch Lu Wu was a peak God King. Without hesitation, he took out his twin sabers and unleashed thousands of saber glows to block the giant swords. Bang! Boom, boom, boom. In the next moment, several thousand saber glows infused with laws and divine power clashed with the giant swords in a thunderous boom. At least 8,000 giant swords collapsed along with the saber glows, exploding into billions of shards of divine light. However, there were still more than 30,000 giant starry swords that carried the power to destroy everything and drown the guards. Broom! With deafening booms, more than 3,100 Divine Lord Guards were obliterated by the giant swords, not even leaving behind a corpse. Blood rained down, bones and flesh scattered, and the world was filled with the thick stench of blood. It was like a scene straight out of hell. Some lofty mountains in a radius of 10,000 li were also obliterated by the giant swords. The entire region had been reduced to rubble, with countless deep pits and ravines in the ground. Dust flew into the air, obscuring the sun and plunging the world into chaos. The Patriarch Lu Wu, the Deputy Patriarch, and the two protectors felt dizzy and their hearts turned cold. In just one move, more than 2,800 Divine Lord Guards had been obliterated on the spot. The surviving 200-some guards were heavily injured, their flesh mangled, and they lay in the rubble on the verge of death. Once the dust settled, the world regained its calm. High in the sky, only Patriarch Lu Wu and Tinsum God Kings were left, facing off against Ji Tianxing from 10,000 li away. As they stared at the bloody rain and the scene of devastation, their eyes turned red with rage and their bodies trembled. "Ah, you devil, executioner, you will not be forgiven even if you die 10,000 times. Bastard, my race and the Golden Crow race are absolutely irreconcilable. Today this god will not only grind your bones to dust, but he will also destroy the Golden Crow race and make you pay 100-fold. The Deputy Patriarch, the two protectors, and the several god kings all roared at the top of their lungs, venting their anger. Only Patriarch Lu Wu remained silent, trying his best to suppress his anger, his face as cold as ice. He stared straight at Ji Tianxing, his eyes as sharp as swords, and said through gritted teeth, "You are not in the 9th degree realm, but a peak god king." Others could not see the truth, but as a peak god king, he could see that Ji Tianxing was definitely a peak god king. Otherwise, It was impossible for him to have such terrifying power and methods. And the Golden Crow Patriarch Swarm Brother was definitely not a peak God King. Therefore, Patriarch Lu Wu finally realized that he had guessed wrongly Ji Tianxing's identity. Chapter 3890. You are not the brother of the Golden Crow Elder. Who are you? Clan leader Lu Wu gripped his divine saber with both hands. The veins on his forehead bulged as he exuded a murderous aura. Don't you think it's too late for you to realize? Ji Tianxing's lips curled into a cold smile as he mocked. I've said it from the start. I'm Long Yan's brother. Long Yan's brother? Clan leader Lu Wu frowned as he stared at Ji Tianxing. He quickly searched through his memories. But in the entire Crimson Dragon continent, only Long Yan is a peak divine king. I have never seen you before. Ji Tianxing's smirk deepened. Who told you that I am from the Crimson Dragon continent? You. Clan leader Lu Wu's expression froze. He suddenly realized something, and his pupils constricted. I know now. You are Long Tian. You are the one who defeated the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor and took control of the Stellar Source continent. 1,000 years ago, you were the only disciple of the heaven-sealing Dragon Emperor. Long Yan had known about the change in the throne of the Stellar Source continent a year ago. Clan leader Lu Wu naturally received the news as well. He had already known Long Tian's identity since then. However, he did not expect Long Tian to come to the Crimson Dragon continent instead of taking control of the Stellar Source continent after taking over the Xuanji Grotto Heaven. It was because of this oversight that he made a mistake in his judgment. So it was Long Yan who knew he was no match for Long Yan and asked you for help. You're able to leave the matters of the Star Source continent behind and cross the ocean to help Long Yan. You two are truly brothers. Clan leader Lu Wu's expression was ferocious. He gritted his teeth and laughed coldly. His cold tone was filled with bone-chilling hatred. The deputy clan leader's hands trembled in anger. He gritted his teeth and cursed. Long Tian, you treacherous and despicable beast. You are indeed a cunning and scheming person. You admitted your identity right from the start and made us guess the wrong answer. Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and chuckled. I'm so upright and honest. I don't care about disguising my identity. You asked and I answered. You were too suspicious and made wild guesses. What does it have to do with me? The deputy patriarch choked on his words. His anger was stuck in his chest, and his face turned purple. His whole body was trembling. Patriarch Lu Wu furrowed his brows and shouted in a cold voice, Little bastard, there's no need to waste any more words. I will kill you today and take control of the Crimson Dragon continent. After I take control of the Crimson Dragon continent, I will go to the Stellar Source continent and take over your land. By then, I will be the first Dragon Emperor in the history of the Dragon Realms to take 2 continents. What the hell are you thinking? Ji Tianxing rolled his eyes at him in disdain. Die. Patriarch Lu Wu roared furiously, brandishing his twin sabers as he charged at Ji Tianxing. Sky-splitting rainbow. The 2 purple gold divine blades were infused with infinite divine power. They contained the divine power of almost 200 laws. They slashed out 2 shocking rainbows and attacked Ji Tianxing from the left and right. Once the rainbows appeared, the sky within 10,000 miles was cut open and a pitch-black spatial crack appeared. Clan leader Lu Wu had locked onto Ji Tianxing's divine soul, making it impossible for him to dodge or escape. The space within 10,000 miles was also sealed, making it impossible for him to teleport away. Ji Tianxing was fearless in the face of such a shocking attack. He activated the invincible golden body and wielded the Sword of Burial of Heaven with both hands. Space-Time Blade. Ji Tianxing activated all of his divine power and infused it into the Sword of Burial of Heaven. He slashed out 2 blazing white giant swords in an instant. Kaboom! The 2 blazing white swords collided with the rainbows. An earth-shattering sound echoed between heaven and earth. Countless fragments of divine light burst out and turned into a terrifying hurricane that swept across the world. The dozen or so god kings were relatively close. The deputy clan leader, 2 protectors, and a few elders were relatively strong, and could resist the hurricane. However, the 4 low-level God Kings that followed Domain Lord Kong were instantly sent flying, their bodies covered in wounds. The all-out battle between 2 peak God Kings was not something low-level God Kings could get close to or resist. Only mid-level God Kings were qualified to participate in the battle. Ji Tianxing and clan leader Lu Wu exchanged a blow. Neither of them had the upper hand, but the sky was shattered. Several spatial cracks appeared high in the sky, as well as numerous gaps in the void. Ji Tianxing knew that Violet Cloud Grotto Heaven was clan leader Lu Wu's home ground. If he continued to fight in Violet Cloud Grotto Heaven, clan leader Lu Wu could use many tricks, and his divine power would not be exhausted. Therefore, he decisively passed through the spatial cracks and fled into the dark and cold void. "Thief, don't you dare run!" Seeing Ji Tianxing turn around and flee, the furious clan leader Lu Wu gave chase without hesitation. The deputy clan leader, 2 protectors, and a few elders also hurriedly passed through the spatial cracks and entered the void. They were all high-level God Kings. Even if they entered the void to fight, they would not be in any danger. As for Domain Lord Kong 1 and the mid-level God Kings, they were somewhat guilty and hesitant. With their strength, if they encountered a void storm or a black hole in the void, their lives would be in danger. Moreover, Long Tian, the person they were attacking, was a bona fide peak God King. If they charged into the void rashly, they would most likely lose their lives. Out of instinct, they did not want to enter the void to fight. However, Patriarch Lu Wu, the protectors, and the elders had all taken the lead and chased into the void. How could they retreat? They only hesitated for a moment before making up their minds and entering the void. Although they put on an expression of righteous indignation and murderous intent, the mid-level God Kings were all taciturn. However, the few middle-level Divine Kings all had a tacit understanding. They were only putting on an act on the surface and would not pursue him with all their might at all. In this way, not long after entering the void, the group began to pull away. Ji Tianxing, who was at the very front, had already penetrated more than 100,000 kilometers into the void. Clan leader Lu Wu followed closely behind, waving his twin sabers as he attacked. Ji Tianxing was never able to shake him off. 30,000 kilometers behind them were the deputy clan leader, the 2 protectors, and the elders. They were eager to kill the enemy, so they used all their strength to hurry on with their journey, pushing their speed to the limit. As for Domain Lord Kong 1 and the others, they were at the very back of the group, 70 to 80,000 kilometers away from the protectors and elders. They were all silently praying that clan leader Lu Wu would kill Long Tian as quickly as possible so that they would not have to bear the risk. At the very least, even if clan leader Lu Wu could not kill Long Tian, he could at least heavily injure him. This way, when they arrived, they would be able to beat a drowning dog without having to bear the risk. However, things did not go as they wished. Ji Tianxing and clan leader Lu Wu had pursued for 300,000 kilometers, but they were not at a disadvantage. In fact, they even had the initiative. He did not fly at full speed. It was as if he was intentionally slowing down so that the protectors and elders could catch up. When the 2 protectors and 4 elders arrived and joined the battle, he actually abandoned clan leader Lu Wu and charged at the elders with all his strength. Sword of Daytime, Dragon Elephant Divine Fist. A cold light instantly blossomed in the void, instantly expanding by millions of times until it became a dazzling sun that engulfed 3 elders. A dragon elephant fist as large as a mountain, carrying the power to destroy everything, blasted towards another elder. Chapter 3891. Bam! There was a loud explosion, and visible ripples of divine power appeared in the void. The elder who was hit by the draconic elephant divine fist was blasted into pieces. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere. The other 3 elders who were hit by the daylight sword did not fare any better. 2 of them were killed by the sword radiance and turned into ashes. The other was heavily injured. His body was a bloody mess, and his divine body was almost destroyed. Fortunately, he had sacrificed 2 medial-grade, king-level divine artifacts to resist the power of the daylight sword. When the dazzling sword radiance dissipated, he escaped with wounds all over his body. He flew back to Zixia Grotto Heaven, covered in blood. Naturally, he could not continue fighting. He could only return to Zixia Grotto Heaven to recuperate. Even if Patriarch Lu Wu and the Deputy Patriarch were displeased, they could not reprimand him. Just like that, Ji Tianxing easily dealt with the four elders. The two protectors took the opportunity to attack him, using their ultimate moves to attack him. However, the powerful divine light shadow and sword radiance did not cause any damage to him, even though they had struck him. On the contrary, the divine arts that the two of them had cast collapsed and dissipated. Their attacks were ineffective, and they saw 3 of the 4 elders killed with only one escaping with serious injuries. They were shocked beyond words. Patriarch Lu Wu witnessed all of this with his own eyes, and he was filled with shock and rage. He believed that he was strong and did not fear anyone other than the Dragon Emperors. Now that he saw Ji Tianxing's terrifying strength, he finally believed that the rumors were true. He had indeed defeated the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor. The void fell into a temporary silence. Patriarch Lu Wu, the Deputy Patriarch, and the 2 protectors surrounded Ji Tianxing from 4 directions. Regent Lord Kong I and the other mid-grade God Kings were still 70,000 miles away, and they were still dawdling over. Seeing their elders killed, they became even more frightened and uneasy, and their speed decreased by more than half. If not for the fact that they were afraid of Patriarch Lu Wu's revenge, they would have turned around and left. They did not dare to fight Ji Tianxing at all. Patriarch Lu Wu and Ji Tianxing were in a stalemate for a while before turning back to look in the direction of Zixia Grotto Heaven. At this moment, the severely injured elder met with Regent Lord Kong I and the others who were rushing over. Regent Lord Kong I and the others actually surrounded the elder and inquired about his well-being. They even wanted to circulate their energy to treat his injuries. On the surface, they seemed to be very concerned about that elder. But Patriarch Lu Wu was well aware that these fellows were just trying to buy time and not participate in the battle. He was furious, but he couldn't flare up at this time. He could only send a voice transmission to everyone. You don't have to come over. Take 3rd elder back to recuperate. This command, with a dignified tone, was simply even more pleasant than celestial music to the ears of these middle-level divine kings. As if they had been granted amnesty, they hurriedly bowed to Patriarch Lu Wu to express their obedience. Afterwards, the God Kings happily escorted the 3rd elder back to Violet Cloud Grotto. As Patriarch Lu Wu, the Vice Patriarch, and the 2 protectors watched them leave, their eyes gleaming with cold light. As the saying went, a friend in need is a friend indeed. Regent Lord Kong I and the other mid-level God Kings were all region lords and leaders of forces subordinate to the Lu Wu clan. In the past, they had been extremely loyal, but through this incident, Patriarch Lu Wu had seen their true nature. He already had a plan in mind. Once he dealt with Long Tian and defeated the Divine Fire Grotto, he would settle accounts with those God Kings. Of course, now was not the time to consider such matters. His top priority was still to deal with Long Tian. If I don't grind your bones to dust today, this god would be the Patriarch Lu Wu in vain. Patriarch Lu Wu gnashed his teeth and angrily roared. He waved his twin sabers and unleashed all sorts of divine abilities and supreme techniques on Ji Tianxing. Swish, swish, swish. In a flash, saber lights filled the sky, carrying the divine power of more than 100 laws as they wove together into a net that enveloped Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing calmly swung his sword to block the attacks. Each strike was faster than the previous one, and a 5-colored sword light filled the sky. Bang, bang, kacha. The saber lights and sword lights clashed fiercely, causing muffled explosions in the sky. Billions of divine light fragments burst out, creating shockwaves after shockwaves of divine power. Patriarch Lu Wu was filled with hatred. He attacked several hundred times in a row, but he still couldn't do anything to Ji Tianxing. The Deputy Patriarch and the 2 protectors also took the opportunity to assist Patriarch Lu Wu in attacking Ji Tianxing. They also used all their strength, using all sorts of divine Tao laws and supreme techniques. However, Ji Tianxing easily dodged most of the attacks. He took the attacks that he couldn't dodge. Countless saber lights, divine arts, and sharp blades landed on his body, but they were all blocked by the golden light on the surface of his body. They couldn't hurt him at all. What was even more unbelievable was that not only was his defense strong, but his divine power was also extremely dense. The divine protective light lasted for 15 minutes, but it didn't weaken at all. His divine power was still abundant. The deputy patriarch and the two protectors felt powerless. They had suffered a severe setback and mental blow. On the Crimson Dragon continent, we are at the top of the rankings, and our names are known throughout the world. But we can't even break through his divine light protection after attacking him for more than 1,000 times? What kind of monster is this guy? Even if Long Yin came personally, he wouldn't be as strong as him, right? Patriarch Lu Wu felt the same way. He knew that he couldn't do anything to Ji Tianxing with his king-level superior grade divine saber. So, he could only cast a spell and take out a silver whip that was 30 feet long. This whip was made of 9 types of divine metal and inlaid with 99 silver crystals. Those were the 99 stars that the creator of the whip in ancient times had refined with a great divine power. Meteor Divine Whip. Pa! Patriarch Lu Wu put away his sabers. He formed a spell with his left hand and swung the Meteor Divine Whip with his right hand toward Ji Tianxing. Along with a clear crack, layers of ripples appeared in the space where the Meteor Divine Whip passed. A powerful force that seemed to be able to tear the air apart swept toward Ji Tianxing. You've finally taken out your natal divine weapon? Ji Tianxing was already prepared for this. The corners of his mouth curled up into a cold smile as he fearlessly went up to greet them. 7 Stars Sword. Sun-shattering sword. He swung the Burial of Heaven and slashed out sword radiance to block the Meteor Divine Whip's attack. His figure flickered in the air. Patriarch Lu Wu swung the whip and attacked 9 times in a row, but Ji Tianxing blocked all of them. At this moment, the deputy patriarch and the 2 enforcers charged over without regard for anything else, desperately restraining Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing's speed of dodging and defending slowed down. Patriarch Lu Wu finally found an opening and swung the whip at Ji Tianxing. Pa! There was a flash of starlight and a crisp sound. Ji Tianxing was sent flying by the Meteor Divine Whip. Seeing this, the deputy patriarch and the 2 protectors couldn't help but cheer. He finally got hit. Patriarch's Meteor Divine Whip must have severely injured him. His meridians must have been shattered. No matter how strong he is, he can't beat Patriarch's Meteor Divine Whip. This is the power of a supreme grade King Divine Weapon. Chapter 3892. The Deputy Patriarch and the 2 Guardians had witnessed the power of the Meteor Divine Whip many times. Other than Long Yin, there was no one who could withstand the power of the Meteor Divine Whip. Anyone who was hit by Patriarch Lu Wu's Meteor Divine Whip would either die or be crippled. Therefore, the Deputy Patriarch and the 2 Guardians were blindly confident in the power of the Meteor Divine Whip. Even Patriarch Lu Wu was full of confidence. His divine sense locked onto Ji Tianxing, who was sent flying, and his heart was filled with anticipation. He really wanted to see to what extent the whip had injured the other party. Swoosh! 30,000 miles away, Ji Tianxing dissipated the powerful impact and stopped steadily in the void. The protective golden light surrounding his body was still intact. He was also not injured. Not only was there no external injuries, there were no internal injuries, and there was no obstruction in the operation of his divine power. The defensive power of the indestructible golden body is indeed strong. Fortunately, Xueshang was only a 9th degree realm god king and not a peak god king. Otherwise, I would not have been able to defeat him and snatch the indestructible golden body. The same god artifact could unleash different powers in different hands. In Ji Tianxing's hands, just the indestructible golden body alone was enough to put him in an invincible position. However, Patriarch Lu Wu and the others kept staring at him. he naturally would not show that he was unharmed and immediately pretended that his divine power was in disorder, that he was suffering from internal injuries. At the same time, he put on a strong front and was unwilling to show that he was weak. At this moment, his acting skills were very delicate and subtle. That kind of complicated feeling of being injured but not wanting others to see through it was vividly displayed. 30,000 miles away, the Deputy Patriarch and the two Guardian Smiles came to an abrupt halt, and their excitement and anticipation quickly faded away. What's going on? Why isn't he injured? It shouldn't be. He was obviously hit by the Meteor Divine Whip. How could he be safe and sound? The three of them were in disbelief as they stared at Ji Tianxing with gloomy expressions. Patriarch Lu Wu sneered and said confidently, "Don't worry, he's already injured. He's just holding on." Obviously, his observation skills were sharper, and his eyes were sharper. He had already seen through Ji Tianxing's disguise. The Deputy Patriarch and the two protectors were shocked and excited. They quickly brandished their swords and rushed over. I knew that he would not be able to withstand the clan leader's Meteor Divine Whip. "Ha, little brat, you're actually pretending to be fine. Let's see how he's going to handle this. Kill him while he's down." Seeing the three of them split up and charge at Ji Tianxing, Patriarch Lu Wu gripped the Meteor Divine Whip and charged at Ji Tianxing. The first ones to rush in front of Ji Tianxing were naturally the Deputy Patriarch and the two protectors. The three of them thought that Ji Tianxing was injured and that the clan leader was following behind him with the divine whip in his hand. Therefore, they surrounded him without fear. At this moment, Patriarch Lu Wu was still tens of thousands of miles away from Ji Tianxing. He suddenly realized that Ji Tianxing's condition was a little strange. Something wasn't right. Could it be that he's not injured and is only pretending to be injured? This thought flashed through Patriarch Lu Wu's mind, and he was about to send a message to the Deputy Patriarch and the two protectors to be careful. However, he felt that this was not very likely. After all, the Meteor Divine Whip was a supreme-grade, king-level divine artifact. Even if Long Tian was a peak god king, he could not take a whip without being injured. While Patriarch Lu Wu was hesitating, Ji Tianxing had already begun to attack. Facing the attacks of the Deputy Patriarch and the two protectors, he seemed to be slow to react and showed no intention of dodging or blocking. It was only when the divine techniques were about to hit him that he suddenly swung the sword of burial of heaven and slashed out a giant golden sword. Sword of Annihilation. Ji Tianxing ignored the attacks of the three and used his invincible golden body to take them all as he slashed out with all his strength. He had drawn upon the power of the five elements world and supplemented it with the divine energy of more than 260 different laws to create this giant golden sword. It truly did possess the power to destroy the world. Kaboom! The giant sword fell from the sky and instantly struck the Deputy Patriarch. Dazzling golden light engulfed him. With a deafening, shattering sound, the Deputy Patriarch, who was a 9th-level god king and protected by a high-grade, king-level divine artifact, was still torn to shreds, his flesh and blood flying everywhere. In just one move, the Deputy Patriarch's divine body was obliterated, and his godhead was severely damaged and thrown into the air. Although the destruction of the high-grade, king-level divine artifact had saved his life, his godhead had also begun to crack. However, cracks appeared on his godhead, and his consciousness became blurry. Soon he fainted. Even more frightening was that the giant sword had only lost half of its power after severely wounding the Deputy Patriarch. Whoosh! Under Ji Tianxing's control, the giant sword actually changed its direction and slashed at the left protector, who was not far away. The left and right protectors saw with their own eyes that the Deputy Patriarch had been severely injured and his life was uncertain. They were already in a state of panic and fear. At this moment, seeing the giant sword slashing at him, the left protector felt the violent divine energy of the laws and the aura of annihilation. He turned around and fled without hesitation. Even though he looked pathetic as he fled, he could not care less about his dignity and dignity. He only wanted to live. At this moment, there was only one thought in his mind. Damn it, only the patriarch can deal with such a peak god king. Why should we interfere? Only a peak god king could deal with a peak god king. This was the common knowledge of the dragon realm. The left protector was very regretful. He should not have gotten involved in this mess. However, it was too late for regrets. The giant golden sword was right in front of him, and the surging divine energy of the laws was about to drown him. At this critical moment, the left protector could only activate his armor and divine sword with all his might to block the attack of the sword radiance. Kaboom! With a deafening sound, the purple divine armor that had expanded to 10,000 feet tall was torn into pieces by the giant's sword. The divine sword that was 10,000 feet long in front of him was also cut in half by the giant golden sword. The left protector's 2 life divine weapons were also destroyed, but they still could not offset the power of the giant golden sword. Bam! The giant golden sword struck him with a loud bang, producing a muffled sound and splashing out a large amount of blood. The left protector, an 8th level god king, was cut in half, and his divine body was destroyed. The 2 halves of his body were still flying in the air and smashing into the depths of the void. The left protector was still in shock. His godhead had already left his body as he fled toward Xixia Grotto Heaven. Whoosh! The godhead that was glowing with golden light shot across the sky like a shooting star, traveling 10,000 miles in an instant. The left protector had never been so terrified in his life. As a result, he had surpassed his previous limit, and his escape speed had reached a new high. Ji Tianxing did not chase after him. He waved his sword and shattered the deputy patriarch's godhead. Kacha! A dozen shards of the godhead flew out, and with a wave of his hand, he put them into his bag. At this moment, Patriarch Lu Wu had rushed over to save him, but it was useless. Only Patriarch Lu Wu and the right protector were left, facing off against the seemingly invincible Ji Tianxing. Patriarch Lu Wu was so enraged that he almost lost his mind and went on a rampage. The right protector stared warily at Ji Tianxing, but his hands were trembling. He no longer had the courage to attack. Book Guest House. Chapter 3893. Patriarch Lu Wu stared at Ji Tianxing, suppressing his boundless rage and forcing himself to remain calm. Anger would only cause one to lose their rationality, and even their fighting strength would be reduced. Thus, he had to remain calm. Since he was in no hurry to attack Ji Tianxing, the right protector was even less foolish enough to take the initiative. He stood even farther away from Ji Tianxing than Patriarch Lu Wu, keeping his guard up. As long as Patriarch Lu Wu did not say the word, he would not attack. Ji Tianxing was also in no hurry to attack. He calmly looked at Patriarch Lu Wu and said, "The elders and deacons under your command have suffered grievous losses, and the Lu Wu clan has already suffered a major blow. If you insist on starting a war, the outcome is already decided. The God Kings Ji Tianxing had killed were all in Violet Cloud Grotto and not on the front lines. However, the rear was too weak to provide reinforcements, and the front lines would not be able to last for long. Patriarch Lu Wu could not deny that if he really started a war, the Lu Wu clan would definitely lose. Moreover, more than half of their elders and deacons had been killed, so the Lu Wu clan would have to spend a very long time to recover. If the Golden Crow clan learned of this, how could they let go of this chance to reap the benefits? When the time came, the Golden Crow clan would most likely negotiate with the Divine Fire Grotto and work with them to destroy the Golden Crow clan. Thus, the Lu Wu clan's fate was far from as simple as defeat. Patriarch Lu Wu had expected this outcome and understood the consequences. But he would never admit defeat, and he would never swallow this resentment. If he could not kill Long Tian, he would feel like a thorn in his back, unable to eat or sleep in peace. Long Tian, this god must admit that you are right. Now that things have developed to this point, and my clan has lost so many elders and deacons, we truly have suffered a major blow. Once the war begins, my clan is likely to lose. But so what? The outcome of the war can only be determined after the battle. But today you must die. Patriarch Lu Wu's body glowed with golden light, blood-red flames of killing intent rising from his body, and a meteor divine whip in his hand blazed with flames of fury. It was clear that he was determined to kill Ji Tianxing even if he had to suffer heavy injuries. The right custodian hesitated for a moment before agreeing. "That's right. You must die." Ji Tianxing shot him a glance and said with a cold smile, "If you don't want to die, you'd better leave early. The decisive battle of peak divine kings isn't what you can participate in." The right protector couldn't help but nod in his heart. He agreed with Ji Tianxing. The heavens took pity on him. In fact, he didn't want to participate in this battle either. But in front of Patriarch Lu Wu, he could not express such thoughts. After all, fleeing at the last minute was a very shameful thing. This kind of thing could happen to those deacons, guards, and even elders, but it definitely couldn't happen to a protector like him. He was a renowned warrior on the Crimson Dragon continent. How could he run away from such humiliation? However, there was only him, the clan leader, and Long Tian in the void. As long as the patriarch did not pursue the matter, he did not care about dignity and honor. Long Tian, so what if you're a peak divine king? This god is truly no match for you, but this god is a protector of the Lu Wu clan and does not fear you. Even if I die here, this god will avenge my dead clansmen. The right protector glared angrily at Ji Tianxing and said righteously, "Ah, is that so?" Ji Tianxing shot him a glance, a mocking smile on his face. He had actually seen through the right custodian's true thoughts long ago. And Ji Tianxing was not the only one who had seen through him. Patriarch Lu Wu sighed in his heart. There was no anger, only disappointment. He turned his back to the right custodian and said calmly, "Right custodian, I'm deeply gratified that you are willing to avenge your clansmen and are not afraid of sacrificing yourself. But the injured clansmen in Zixia Grotto Heaven need you more. Go and comfort our clansmen and protect our home." Hearing this, the right protector's body trembled as a look of shame appeared on his face. He naturally knew that Patriarch Lu Wu had seen through his thoughts. But he also understood that there was no point in staying and that he could not harm Long Tian. Thus, after a few moments of silence, he bowed to Patriarch Lu Wu and solemnly said, "Many thanks, Patriarch. Patriarch, please take care. This subordinate will obey." After bowing, he suppressed his guilt and helplessness and flew back to Zixia Grotto Heaven. 20 breaths later, when the right custodian was more than 100,000 li away, Patriarch Lu Wu said, "Now that only you and I are left, we can fight without fear." "As you wish." Ji Tianxing expressionlessly raised the burial of heaven and attacked. Heavenly Dragon slash. In a flash, he teleported 10,000 li away, appeared in front of Patriarch Lu Wu, and slashed down with his sword. A sword of light tens of thousands of feet long, like a heavenly dragon, exploded with a divine might that could destroy all. Patriarch Lu Wu's pupils constricted, and his eyes flashed with shock and surprise. "You can teleport in the void too? How is this possible?" He was keenly aware that the void was different from the dragon realm. All gods could teleport through the dragon realm, the only difference being the distance. But in the void, no one could teleport, not even with the power of a divine artifact. This was because there was no spatial energy in the void that could be used. But now Long Tian had done it. Patriarch Lu Wu could not understand or believe this. It was the shock in his heart that caused his counterattack to be slightly slower. By the time he swung the Fallen Star Divine Whip in a counterattack, the Golden Dragon Sword aura had already slashed down. Boom! Crack! With a deafening boom, Patriarch Lu Wu was sent flying, his armor and protective divine light shattering. Several wounds had been left on his body. This was the first time he had been injured in his battle with Ji Tianxing. Although his injuries were not serious, they were only caused by Patriarch Lu Wu's distraction. However, his expression was still solemn, and a bad premonition arose in his heart. Just as expected, the result of the battle between the two of them confirmed Patriarch Lu Wu's premonition. Ever since he had been injured, he had been at a disadvantage. Ji Tianxing had completely suppressed him and forced him to retreat again and again. Patriarch Lu Wu did not know whether it was because he had been weakened by his injuries or because his opponent was finally going all out. In short, he felt extremely great pressure, and he charged left and right amidst the sword lights and divine energy of the laws that covered the heavens and the earth. Yet he was unable to break free. Even when he pushed the meteor god whip to its limit, Ji Tianqing's invincible golden body was able to block it. The power of a king-level high-quality divine artifact was no longer decisive, and Patriarch Lu Wu was getting more and more passive. 2 hours later, the two of them had exchanged more than 8,000 blows. At this point, Patriarch Lu Wu was covered in wounds and weak. Ji Tianqing was still brimming with divine energy and unharmed. Moreover, in order to end the battle as quickly as possible, he had taken out a second king-level divine artifact, the Primal Chaos Bell. Chapter 3894. With just the invincible golden body, Ji Tianqing was able to firmly suppress Patriarch Lu Wu. The moment he took out the Primal Chaos Bell, victory was immediately decided. There was no question that Patriarch Lu Wu had been defeated and heavily wounded, leaving him with only 40% of his strength. Buzz! Buzz! The Primal Chaos Bell floated in the air, unleashing a boundless pressure that viciously suppressed Patriarch Lu Wu. His clothes were ragged, and his armor was shattered. He was covered in blood as he stood in the void. His body was bent, and he looked extremely miserable. There was a wash basin-sized wound on his chest, through which one could clearly see his organs. Besides his heart, all his other organs had been pulverized and gushed out of his body. With such heavy wounds, his divine body was only a step away from collapse. These were visible wounds, but what was not visible was the crack in his godhead. Ji Tianqing had already put away the sword of burial of heaven and was standing in the air, completely unharmed, as he looked down at the heavily wounded Patriarch Lu Wu. "You've already lost." Ji Tianqing's voice was very calm, devoid of any joy or excitement from defeating Patriarch Lu Wu. His expression and tone made it seem like defeating Patriarch Lu Wu was a matter of course, as simple as eating or drinking. "You actually have two supreme quality divine artifacts." Patriarch Lu Wu did his best to endure his wounds as he silently swallowed a divine pill to heal his divine body. Although his godhead was also wounded, there was currently no way to heal it. As a peak god king, being able to obtain a supreme quality divine artifact is already the greatest fortune of all. For you to have two of them, you are the luckiest person in the world. Thus, this god's defeat at your hands is nothing to be ashamed of. Although Patriarch Lu Wu had lost and his wounds were miserable, he did not submit. In any case, Long Tian had come to kill him. He was no match for Long Tian, so whether he begged for mercy or not, he would not be able to escape death. Since that was the case, he might as well be a little more unyielding. At the very least, he could die with more dignity. Ji Tianqing slowly strode toward Patriarch Lu Wu, at the same time activating the Primal Chaos Bell to strengthen its suppression. Immediately, the stooped Patriarch Lu Wu's body began to crack, and he curled up like a shrimp. He struggled with all his might, constantly letting out painful groans. Ji Tianqing stopped 100 steps away from him and said expressionlessly, "You've lost. Your life is now in my hands." "Hee. Then what are you waiting for? Hurry up and kill me." Patriarch Lu Wu struggled to raise his head and glared savagely. "Don't tell me you want to humiliate me before you kill me? Do you want me to beg for mercy? Bah, don't even think about it." Ji Tianqing's expression remained unchanged. "If this prince wanted to kill you, you would already be dead by now. Do I still need to talk nonsense with you? What this king wants to tell you is that your life is in this king's hands, but it also depends on your choice." "What do you mean?" Patriarch Lu Wu asked with a frown. "Didn't you come to assassinate me? Are you going to show mercy and not kill me?" He. "Stop acting. This king won't fall for your tricks." Patriarch Lu Wu was very wary. He didn't believe that Ji Tianqing would let him go. Ji Tianqing didn't press the issue. He calmly said, "Fine. Since you've given up on the chance to live, this king will send you on your way." As he spoke, he activated the primordial bell of primal chaos, causing it to erupt with an even greater suppressive force. At the same time, he took out the Sword of Burial of Heaven and prepared to kill Patriarch Lu Wu. Patriarch Lu Wu became somewhat worried when he saw that Chun Fan was about to attack. He hurriedly shouted, "Wait, why aren't you acting tough anymore? You still don't want to die?" Ji Tianxing raised an eyebrow. Patriarch Lu Wu ignored Chun Fan's mockery and asked, "Are you really willing to let me live?" Ji Tianxing asked in a low voice. "Then why do you think this king came to Purple Cloud Grotto? To kill you or to stop this war?" "Of course it's to stop this war." Patriarch Lu Wu subconsciously replied, "This king has no enmity with you. There's no need for you to kill me. At least you haven't lost your mind." Patriarch Lu Wu finally understood Ji Tianxing's meaning. "Then you mean that as long as you can stop this war, you won't kill this king?" Ji Tianxing nodded. "Really?" Patriarch Lu Wu saw a glimmer of hope in his eyes, but he didn't dare to believe it. Ji Tianxing nodded once more. Patriarch Lu Wu frowned and thought for a moment before saying in a low voice, "Fine, then this king will believe you this once. This king can send the order right now and have the soldiers on the front lines retreat. My clan will give up on this war. This king swears on the name and honor of the Lu Wu clan." No, no, no. This is far from enough." Ji Tianxing waved his hand and said in a disdainful voice, "Patriarch Lu Wu, you're oversimplifying things. What this king wants is not only to stop this war, but also to stop countless wars in the future." "What do you mean?" Patriarch Lu Wu immediately became vigilant, his expression and eyes turning gloomy. Ji Tianxing sneered, "If you want to live, you must withdraw all your soldiers and stop this war. Moreover, you must promise that you will never fight for the throne of the Crimson Dragon Emperor and never start a war like this. Your promise on the name and honor of the Lu Wu clan is too little in this king's eyes. You must swear an oath to the heavens, an oath to the heavenly Tao. Never fight for the throne of the Crimson Dragon Emperor and never start a war." Patriarch Lu Wu's eyes widened in anger as he roared, "Impossible! You're delusional." Ji Tianxing didn't get angry. Instead, he weighed the Sword of Burial of Heaven in his hand and sneered, "Since you're so stubborn, then just die. In order to eliminate all future troubles, this king will kill all the god kings of the Lu Wu clan after killing you." After saying this, he raised the Sword of Burial of Heaven again and circulated his energy to release a dazzling sword radiance. You're despicable and shameless." Patriarch Lu Wu was furious, but there was nothing he could do. The dazzling sword radiance of the Sword of Burial of Heaven was about to descend from the heavens. Patriarch Lu Wu hesitated for a moment before finally coming to a decision. "Stop." This king agrees. After shouting these words, Patriarch Lu Wu seemed to have exhausted all his strength. His footsteps became unsteady, and his figure became bleak. He took several deep breaths to suppress his grief and humiliation. Then he said in a low voice, "This king swears to the heavens that he will never fight for the throne of the Crimson Dragon Emperor." Before Patriarch Lu Wu could finish his oath, Ji Tianxing interrupted him. "Recite it." Ji Tianxing casually took out a jade slip and tossed it to Patriarch Lu Wu. Patriarch Lu Wu didn't know what was going on, but when he took the jade slip, he was instantly dumbfounded. This is a model for the oath to the heavenly Tao. You prepared this long ago?" There were over 1,000 words in the jade slip, and it was a very formal and strict oath to the heavenly Tao that Ji Tianxing had drawn up for Patriarch Lu Wu. Book Guest House. Chapter 3895. "Of course, this prince has come prepared." Ji Tianxing replied with an indifferent expression. Patriarch Lu Wu fell silent, his heart filled with grief and indignation. Before long, Tian entered Violet Cloud Grotto. He had already expected this result and had prepared everything. Just how confident was he? Just how much did he look down on the Lu Wu race? Patriarch Lu Wu gripped the jade slip and stared at the nearly 1,000 characters of the Heavenly Tao Oath, feeling incredibly humiliated. But he was too weak, and his life was in Long Tian's hands. He had no right to choose. No matter how humiliated he felt, he could only hold the jade slip with both hands and recite the heavenly Tao oath. When Patriarch Lu Wu was halfway through reciting the oath, wisps of divine light began to appear above his head and around his body, faintly flowing with heavenly Tao energy. 100 breaths later, when he finished reciting the heavenly Tao oath, a dull rumble came from the depths of the void, like rolling thunder. His body was also shrouded in the divine light of laws, and a wisp of obscure Taoist aura began to dance above his head like a dragon. Enveloped by this Taoist aura, Patriarch Lu Wu finally understood just how terrifying the power of the heavenly Tao was. His body stiffened, and he didn't dare to move as he stared in shock at this scene. This is a true heavenly Tao oath. As expected, it has activated the power of the heavenly Tao and created a resonance with it. In that case, if I break this oath, will I really be punished by the heavenly Tao? In the past, Patriarch Lu Wu did not have much respect for swearing to the heavens. He had always felt that the punishment of the heavenly Tao was illusory and did not take it to heart. But this scene made him understand that the restrictions of the heavenly Tao oath truly existed. When he thought about the contents of the oath and how cruel the punishment for breaking it was, he felt a chill run down his spine. Damn bastard, he's too vicious. Patriarch Lu Wu glared at Ji Tianxing and inwardly cursed. A few moments later, the Taoist aura and divine light vanished, and the void returned to normal. Patriarch Lu Wu silently glared at Ji Tianxing and sternly said, "This god has already sworn the heavenly Tao oath. You must also abide by the agreement." From now on, as long as he was alive, the Lu Wu clan would not be able to seize the throne of Red Dragon Emperor, much less deal with the divine fire paradise. Otherwise, he would suffer the wrath of the heavens. He would receive the cruelest punishment and turn into ashes. Not only would he die, but the fortune of the Lu Wu clan would also be damaged. The suppression of the heavenly Tao would cause their bloodline to wither away. Just like the other sinners, there was no question that Ji Tianxing's vicious move was even more effective than killing Patriarch Lu Wu. Ji Tianxing waved his hand and shot out a golden light, retrieving the jade slip back into his hand. He said, "Of course, I'm not a person who goes back on his words. Naturally, I won't kill you. However, I hope you understand that this prince did not kill you not, because this prince is merciful. It was Long Yin who pleaded on your behalf. It was he who asked this prince to spare your life." Patriarch Lu Wu was stunned, his eyes brimming with confusion. "Long Yin is pleading for leniency on my behalf? How is this possible? I wanted to seize his throne and kill him. Why would he plead for leniency on my behalf?" Patriarch Lu Wu instinctively did not believe Ji Tianxing's words at all. However, the truth was right in front of him. This person clearly had the ability to kill him, but it spared his life and only forced him to swear an oath. Patriarch Lu Wu was still skeptical, his expression and emotions very complicated. Ji Tianxing asked again, "Have you seen a young man from the human race? His name is Wuhan." 10-odd years ago, Patriarch Lu Wu shook his head. "Since when did humans come from the Red Dragon continent? This prince has not left this continent for more than 300 years. The sliver of hope in Ji Tianxing's eyes was extinguished. Without another word, he turned and flew away. Patriarch Lu Wu stood in place, watching his departing figure. After a long while, Ji Tianxing's figure disappeared into the void. Only then did Patriarch Lu Wu drag his heavily injured body back to Violet Cloud Paradise. 2 hours later, Patriarch Lu Wu returned to Violet Cloud Paradise. The Right Protector and several deacons were recuperating in Violet Cloud Divine Palace. The Purple Cloud Divine Palace, which had been peaceful and auspicious before, was now a scene of devastation. Broken ruins and deep pits were everywhere. A heavy and sorrowful aura pervaded the air, and everyone's hearts were heavy. Seeing that Patriarch Lu Wu had returned alive, everyone was excited and hurriedly gathered around him. "Wonderful! Patriarch is back. Lord Patriarch, have you already killed Long Tian?" Patriarch has returned in triumph. Long Tian must have been executed, right? Previously, they were still grieving over the deaths of so many elders, deacons, and guards. Now that Patriarch Lu Wu had returned, everyone was excited and overjoyed. But when Patriarch Lu Wu saw the hopeful eyes of the crowd, he shook his head with a gloomy expression. Seeing his reaction, the Right Protector, the deacons, and the captain of the guards were all stunned. The excitement on their faces and the hope in their eyes dimmed and dissipated. They had a bad premonition. However, no one was foolish enough to ask, "Patriarch, did you lose? Or was it that you couldn't do anything to Long Tian and let him escape?" Everyone silently stared at Patriarch Lu Wu, waiting for his answer. Patriarch Lu Wu sighed, threw down a few words, and then turned and left. "Pass on my order to the front line. All soldiers are to withdraw." These words left the Right Protector, the deacons, and the captain of the guards frozen to the spot as if they had been petrified. They stared in a daze at Patriarch Lu Wu's bleak back, unable to recover from their daze for a long time. After a long while, Patriarch Lu Wu entered the depths of the divine palace and secluded himself to recover. The captain of the guards and deacons scratched their heads as they gathered around the Right Protector and asked for the reason. "Lord Protector, what does the Patriarch mean by this? We've prepared for so many years and finally managed to gather so many soldiers for a full-scale attack. Why do we have to withdraw?" The fact that the Patriarch was able to return alive means that he wasn't defeated. At most, he managed to fight to a draw with Long Tian. "Why do we have to withdraw? Lord Protector, what happened to you in the void?" The captain of the guards and deacons had too low a status. Only the Right Protector could make decisions here. The Right Protector was perplexed by their questions, and he gloomily said, "You're asking me, but who am I supposed to ask? When I left the void, the Patriarch and Long Tian had yet to formally fight." The captain of the guards and deacons all fell silent. Even though they were unwilling, they had no choice but to accept the fact that the Patriarch had lost to Long Tian. Otherwise, the Patriarch would not have ordered the army to withdraw. A deacon hesitated for a moment before asking, "Right Protector, what should we do? Should we send a message to the soldiers on the front line?" "Nonsense," the Right Protector angrily barked. "No matter what the reason is, since the Patriarch has given the order, we must carry it out." The deacons and captain of the guard shrunk back, clasped their hands, bowed, and hurried off to carry out their mission. The Right Protector quickly returned to his residence and went to his study to draft the Patriarch's decree for the elders on the front line. Chapter 3896. At the same time, the Sword of Burial of Heaven was flying south at lightning speed, rushing back to the divine fire grotto heaven. Ji Tianxing was in the world within the sword, staying in the distorted space-time. After leaving the purple cloud grotto heaven, he sent a message to the Red Dragon Emperor. The content of the message was very simple, with only one sentence. "The Lu Wu clan has been dealt with, and will be retreating soon. You can act now." After receiving the message, Long Yin replied not long after, "I have found the hiding place of the Golden Crow clan leader, and am trying to eliminate the defenses around him. I will act in 3 days at the latest. How is your situation? Are you injured?" Not only was Long Yin worried about Ji Tianxing's safety, he also asked him about the specific process of dealing with the Lu Wu clan. From his tone, one could tell that Ji Tianxing had dealt with the Lu Wu clan so quickly, which made him quite shocked and happy. After receiving the message, Ji Tianxing did not plan to hide it from Long Yin, so he sent him a message and told him what had happened. After learning that he had infiltrated the purple cloud grotto heaven and assassinated so many divine king elders and deacons, Long Yin became even more excited. However, he did not waste a communication jade slip to express his shock and admiration to Ji Tianxing. After all, the two of them had only left 3 communication jade slips, so they could not use them to chat. They had to keep them for proper business. On the way, Ji Tianxing was still pondering, with Long Yan's strength, it should not be a problem for him to infiltrate the Golden Crow clan like I did, assassinate their divine kings, and then deal with the Golden Crow clan leader. He will probably finish off the Golden Crow clan leader before I even return to the Divine Fire Grotto Heaven. As long as the Golden Crow clan leader swears a heavenly oath, this war will truly end. After that, the Red Dragon continent will be at peace for at least 10,000 years. Of course, after Long Yin defeats the Golden Crow clan leader, you better not forget to help me ask about that matter. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, Ji Tianxing gathered his thoughts and began to count his spoils of war. In this infiltration of the Purple Cloud Grotto Heaven, he had killed nearly 30 Divine King experts and obtained more than 20 Divine Persona fragments. This was the most important gain. As for the more than 20 interspatial rings, he didn't really care about the cultivation resources inside. In any case, he already had hundreds of trillions worth of cultivation resources. Ordinary resources and treasures could no longer arouse his interest. Recently, his strength had reached the peak of the 8th degree realm, and he was about to step into the 9th level of the Divine King realm. He wanted to refine the quintessence fragments and condense more divine Tao laws so that he could break through to the 9th level of the God King realm as soon as possible. Time continued to pass, and 7 days passed in a flash. Ji Tianxing had been cultivating in the distorted space-time for 350 days, which was close to a year. More than 20 pieces of Godhead fragments were devoured and refined by him. His cultivation base had reached the peak of the 8th layer of the Divine King realm. He could break through to the 9th layer of the Divine King realm at any time. Unfortunately, under such a relatively safe and peaceful cultivation environment, he was unable to successfully break through. Besides that, he'd refined and absorbed over 40 types of divine Tao laws from those 20-plus quintessence fragments. Presently, the number of divine Tao laws he'd grasped had already reached as many as 900. Naturally, his strength had increased by a few notches. After he ended his cultivation, he used his inner vision and checked his body thoroughly. Feeling the vigorous and majestic divine power in his body, he muttered to himself, "The current me is almost at the peak of my previous life. I reckon that when I break through to the 9th level of the Divine King realm, my strength will be similar to that year." Back then, he was the strongest person among the peak Divine Kings. Even if it was Azura, Pan Ruo, Dao Xingyun, Lu Zhuyang, and the rest, the 5 of them had to join forces to besiege him and pay a heavy price before they could kill him. And in this life, he had returned to the peak. If he didn't repeat the same mistake, the burial of Heaven's sword was still flying high in the sky. A few 100,000 miles ahead was the Divine Fire Grotto. Ji Tianxing thought to himself, 7 days have passed in the outside world. Why hasn't Long Yin sent me a message? Could it be that he hasn't taken action? Or perhaps he met with an accident? Thinking of this, he couldn't help but feel worried. Coincidentally, he was wondering why Long Yin still hadn't sent a message. Then, a transmission jade slip flew in from the sky and landed beside the Heaven Barrier's sword. The burial of Heaven hurriedly stopped. Ji Tianxing used his arts to take the jade slip into the sword world. He appeared in the sword world and used his divine sense to read the contents of the jade slip. Long Yan's slightly hoarse and tired voice immediately sounded in his mind. "Brother, my operation has failed. I endured for 3 days and secretly assassinated 9 divine kings, eliminating the experts under the Golden Crow tribe's leader. But he was very cunning. From the beginning, he was on guard against me and the Lu Wu tribe. So, he had a few high divine kings around him to protect him in secret. After I attacked, I fought with him for 4 hours and heavily injured him. I also killed 2 divine kings who were protecting him. But I was also heavily injured and couldn't kill him in one go. The other 2 divine kings protected the Golden Crow tribe's leader as he retreated. I chased after him for 3 days and 3 nights in the void. I risked being heavily injured and killed his 2 guards. I was just about to deal with the Golden Crow tribe's leader. I didn't expect that a team of experts would rush over from outer space and save him. That team of experts were all divine kings from outer space. There were a total of 6 of them, and the leader was the 9th stage realm Blue Scorpion Divine King. According to what I know, that Blue Scorpion Divine King's influence in the Scorpion Star region is extremely great, and he's a sworn brother of the Golden Crow tribe's leader. I fought with him for 2 hours, but in the end, they still escaped. Long Yin roughly recounted what had happened in the past 7 days. His tired tone revealed shame and unwillingness. After all, Ji Tianxing had helped Divine Fire Grotto Heaven out of their predicament, and the plan they had planned was perfect. In the end, Ji Tianxing had successfully completed the mission, but he had failed. This made him take it to heart, and also had a feeling of guilt towards Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing's expression was calm as he pondered for a moment and entered a message into the jade slip. Long Yin, you don't need to blame yourself. The Golden Crow tribe is the weakest among the 3 forces, so they will naturally be extra careful and vigilant. Find a place in the void to recuperate first, and there's no need to rush back. I'll go look for you now, and after we meet up, we'll think of a way to deal with the Golden Crow tribe's leader and Blue Scorpion Divine King. It's fine if we don't take action, but since we've already fallen out, this time we must settle things and completely destroy the Golden Crow tribe's ambitions. Hang on for a while. I'll be there very soon. Following that, Ji Tianxing sent out the jade slip and instructed Burial of Heaven. No need to return to Divine Fire Grotto Heaven. Continue heading south to the Golden Crow tribe's territory. Burial of Heaven understood his meaning and didn't reduce its speed. It sped past the 10,000 feet Divine Fire Abyss and continued flying south. Although it was possible to break through the spatial barrier and enter the void from the vicinity of Divine Fire Grotto Heaven. However, entering the void from here was different from Long Yan's pursuit route. If Ji Tianxing wanted to meet up with Long Yan, he had to enter the void from the Golden Crow tribe's territory. The direction and route would be more accurate. Book Guesthouse Reading Website. Chapter 3897. The power of the Golden Crow clan was in the south of the Crimson Dragon continent. Since ancient times, the Golden Crow clan had occupied the Great Thousand Grotto Heaven of the Thousand Creations region in the south. There were 15 regions between the Divine Flame Grotto Heaven and the Great Thousand Grotto Heaven. With the speed of the Burial of Heaven, he would need 8 days to reach there. However, Ji Tianxing reminded the Burial of Heaven, go all out and try to reach there in 7 days. The Burial of Heaven knew that he was worried about Changyan's safety, so he went all out and increased his speed by 30%. Ji Tianxing stayed in the distorted space-time and continued to cultivate for 3 months. However, his strength did not improve much, and he could not break through. Since he could not cultivate, he had nothing to do. He got up and walked under the blood flame sacred tree. He saw that Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and Wu Shuang were cultivating in seclusion, so he did not want to disturb them. Therefore, he left the blood flame sacred tree and walked in the distorted space-time to visit Bai Feng. Bai Feng built his own mountain, waterfall, and divine palace in the depths of the distorted space-time. He stayed in the magnificent divine palace. When Ji Tianxing entered the divine palace, he was not cultivating in seclusion. He was reading in the study. Seeing Ji Tianxing, Bai Feng quickly put down the ancient book and bowed. My lord, why are you here? I'm here to see you. Ji Tianxing waved his hand to indicate that he could dispense with the formalities. He walked into the study and sized him up. Have you recovered from your injuries? Bai Feng quickly nodded and said, I have been cultivating in seclusion to heal my injuries. I recovered 2 years ago. Ji Tianxing nodded and asked, you are already at the peak of the 7th level of the Divine King realm. Why don't you work hard to reach the 8th level of the Divine King realm? Bai Feng smiled bitterly and said, My lord, you may not know this, but I have been cultivating in seclusion for the past 2 years. However, I'm not talented enough and am stuck in a bottleneck. I can't break through. If I don't have a great opportunity, I will not be able to break through. Therefore, I ended my cultivation and read some ancient books to adjust my state of mind. Ji Tianxing nodded approvingly. That's a good idea. Breaking through can't be forced. How about this? Since you're bored here, why don't you give me a hand? In a hurry? Bai Feng was stunned for a moment before she cupped her hands and bowed. Please enlighten me, my lord. Ji Tianxing explained. It's like this. I'm currently rushing to the south of the Crimson Dragon continent with my divine sword. However, I want to take advantage of these few days of travel to cast a spell to refine a weapon and strengthen the divine sword. Bai Feng immediately understood what he meant and bowed. I am willing to serve my lord. Thus, Ji Tianxing brought Bai Feng out of the distorted space-time. The sword of burial of heaven stopped high in the sky, and Ji Tianxing and Bai Feng appeared in the sky. Bai Feng, if we head south from here, we'll have to cross 14 domains before we can reach the Thousand Mounts domain. You have to rush with all your might, and don't cause any trouble along the way. Ji Tianxing reminded Bai Feng. Bai Feng nodded to show that she understood. Flames flashed all over her body, and she revealed her true form. Chirp! In the next moment, a phoenix that was as white as snow and was thousands of feet long appeared in the sky. This was Bai Feng's true form. It had a majestic body, and its wings were more than 8,000 feet wide. Its feathers were as neat as knives and shone with a dense white light. If Bai Feng traveled in her human form, her speed would be slightly reduced. She could only reach her maximum speed if she traveled in her true form. Unfortunately, Bai Feng wasn't a real phoenix. She was just a large phoenix that had a trace of the divine phoenix's bloodline. The Phoenix clan with a pure bloodline had been punished by the heavens in the ancient times and had long since disappeared. If she was a real divine phoenix, she would be able to travel even faster. All right, I'll leave the rest to you. Ji Tianxing kept the sword of burial of heaven and took out the 9 heavens 10 absolutes pagoda, placing it on Bai Feng's broad back. He entered the divine pagoda's distorted space-time to make preparations to strengthen the sword of burial of heaven. Bai Feng also spread her wings and soared into the sky like a white light streaking across the sky, heading straight south. In the distorted space-time sky, Ji Tianxing sat under the blood-flame sacred tree and searched for refining materials in his interspatial ring. He had accumulated hundreds of trillions worth of resources. Just the refining materials alone had piled up into a small mountain. He wanted to choose materials suitable for strengthening the sword of burial of heaven from that small mountain. Although the sword of burial of heaven had long been refined into a high-grade, king-grade divine artifact. Among the 900 types of laws contained in the divine sword, more than 200 of them were repeated. This caused the sword of burial of heaven's power to not be outstanding. In the past, Ji Tianxing hadn't mastered so many divine Tao laws and couldn't refine the sword of burial of heaven into a true high-grade, king-grade divine artifact. Now that he had mastered 900 types of divine Tao laws, he could just replace the repeated laws in the sword of burial of heaven. In addition to replacing the repeated laws and restrictions, he also wanted to choose some strengthening materials to strengthen the sword of burial of heaven's material. Only in this way could the sword of burial of heaven unleash more power. 6 hours later, Ji Tianxing chose 6 sets of refining materials from the small mountain. He then took out the divine cauldron of the 9 heavens and cast a spell to activate the cauldron's array, igniting the divine fire of the 9 heavens. When the divine fire in the cauldron surged and the temperature reached a critical point, he placed the sword of burial of heaven into the cauldron and began to forge it. The sword of burial of heaven was forged in the divine fire for 3 days and 3 nights before it melted into a sparkling and translucent sword embryo. Its texture became soft and moldable. Ji Tianxing then placed 6 sets of refining materials into the cauldron one by one, melting them into golden liquid and fusing them into the sword embryo. After 36 days of repeated tempering and forging, the 6 sets of materials successfully fused with the sword of burial of heaven, causing the sword of burial of heaven's material to reach a new level. Not only did its strength double, it could also withstand even more berserk divine power and law power. It also possessed even more effects, allowing it to have even more variations when dealing with different experts. At this point, the first step of forging the sword of burial of heaven was completed. Ji Tianxing then began the second step, replacing the repeated laws and restrictions in the sword of burial of heaven. This was the most crucial step and also the step that consumed the most effort and time. He held his breath and focused on casting a spell. He shot out countless strands of divine light and poured them into the cauldron, enveloping the sword of burial of heaven. Under his meticulous control, the repeated laws and restrictions on the sword of burial of heaven were peeled away bit by bit. When forging, one had to be very careful and slow to add laws and restrictions to the divine sword. Similarly, removing the repeated laws and restrictions from the divine sword without affecting the other laws and restrictions had to be done very carefully. His speed could not be fast either. Ji Tianxing used an entire 2 months to remove more than 200 repeated laws and more than 2,000 repeated restrictions. As a result, the grade of the sword of burial of heaven dropped, dropping from high-grade king grade to mid-grade king grade. Of course, this was only temporary. After removing the repeated laws and restrictions, Ji Tianxing did not rest. He continued to cast spells, adding new laws and restrictions to the sword of burial of heaven. One law and restriction after another fused into the sword of burial of heaven, forming tiny divine patterns. The grade of the sword of burial of heaven was gradually rising, and its power was also constantly increasing. Chapter 3898. Ji Tianxing was immersed in the artifact forging and forgot about the passage of time. 7.5 months had passed by the time he finished forging the artifact and restored the burial of heaven back to a high-grade king-grade artifact. At this moment, the Heaven Barrier sword had exactly 900 laws and 9,000 types of restrictions layered on it. None of the nomological laws and restrictions were the same. This was a genuine high-grade, king-grade divine artifact. Compared to before the reforging, the Burial of Heaven's power had increased by 50%. After the artifact forging, Ji Tianxing put away the 9 heavens divine cauldron and sat under the blood flame sacred tree to meditate. The 9-month-long artifact forging process had consumed too much of his divine power and mind energy. He consumed divine pills, origin stones, and large amounts of divine stones to quickly replenish his divine power. The Burial of Heaven quietly floated in the space-time in front of him, as cold and silent as ever. On the surface, the Burial of Heaven did not seem to have any changes. Its outer appearance was still the same as before. It was pitch black and emitted a cold and silent aura. Only Divine King experts could see that the extremely fine divine patterns on the blade had undergone some changes. Now, the divine patterns on the Burial of Heaven had become more perfect and coordinated. The entire sword's aura also faintly resonated with heaven, earth, and space-time, appearing more mysterious. Ji Tianxing circulated his energy and meditated for half a month. His divine power had completely recovered, but his mind was still somewhat tired. After all, mind energy was not so easy to recover. It required a long time to recuperate. But to Ji Tianxing, this was not a problem. Calculating the time, I've been in the distorted space-time for almost a year, and Bai Feng has been on the road for 7 days. With his speed, he should have reached the Thousand Mounts region, right? This thought flashed through his mind, and Ji Tianxing got up and left the distorted space-time. Swoosh! The next moment, a white light flashed, and he appeared on Bai Feng's back. At this moment, Bai Feng was soaring high in the sky as fast as lightning. Thousands of miles of mountains and rivers flashed past, and the surging river was like a jade belt, meandering under the lofty mountains and precipitous ridges. Sensing Ji Tianxing's appearance, Bai Feng did not slow down and continued to fly forward. At the same time, she sent a voice transmission to greet him. "My lord, done with your seclusion?" "Yes." Ji Tianxing nodded and asked, "Where is this? Have you reached the Thousand Mounts region?" Bai Feng hurriedly replied, "We just entered the Thousand Mounts domain yesterday. We should be able to reach the Great Thousand Paradise by tonight." Ji Tianxing nodded and asked, "How is it? After 7 days of continuous travel, you've adjusted your state of mind? Of heavens, of heaven, of heaven, of heaven's journey, and of heavens. In the past 7 days, I crossed 14 regions and seen thousands of mountains and rivers. My state of mind is suddenly enlightened. My hope for a breakthrough has been ignited." "Yes, Baifeng nodded and agreed since she had the same idea. Then, Baifeng returned to the distorted space-time and went into seclusion to break through the bottleneck. Ji Tianqing took out the Burial of Heaven sword and entered the sword world. The Burial of Heaven sword took care of the journey. The speed of the Burial of Heaven sword was almost 50% faster than before. Baifeng expected to reach the Great Thousand Grotto Heaven at night, but the Burial of Heaven sword only took 8 hours. In the evening, when the sun was setting, the Burial of Heaven sword arrived outside the Great Thousand Grotto Heaven. The entrance of the Great Thousand Grotto Heaven was above a large lake surrounded by mountains. After the Long Yin incident, hundreds of guards were stationed at the entrance of the Grotto Heaven. There were even thousands of guards patrolling around the lake. The Great Thousand Grotto Heaven was heavily guarded and vigilant. However, to Ji Tianqing, this was not a problem at all. As long as he wanted to, he could easily enter the Great Thousand Grotto Heaven and defeat everyone from the Golden Crow tribe. However, this was a waste of time. He stopped at the edge of the lake, looked up at the sky, and slowly raised the Burial of Heaven sword. Swoosh! With a wave of the divine sword, the sky was illuminated and the space barrier of the dragon realm was broken. A void crack that was thousands of feet long and 100 feet wide appeared. Outside the pitch-black spatial rift, specks of starlight could be vaguely seen in the dark void. Swoosh! In a flash, Ji Tianqing passed through the void crack and entered the cold void. At the same time, in the sky above the lake tens of thousands of miles away, a group of patrolling guards noticed something strange and hurried over. After 30 breaths, when the patrolling guards arrived at the edge of the lake and arrived near the void crack, they saw that there was no one around. The crack in the sky had also shrunk to about 100 feet under the power of the Way of the Heavens. The guards were on high alert as they searched around with full vigilance. However, they did not find anything after 20 breaths. As for the void crack, it had already healed and disappeared. The guards stayed for a long time, but they could not find the person who broke the space barrier, nor did they find any clues. They could only rush back to the Great Thousand Grotto Heaven to report the results. Ji Tianqing rode the Burial of Heaven sword and advanced rapidly in the void. This was not his first time entering the void, but it was his first long journey after ascending. In front of him, to his left, in the distant void, there was a dense cluster of starlight. With the dark void as the background, the tens of thousands of stars formed a special pattern that looked like a scorpion. Without a doubt, that was Ji Tianqing's destination, the Scorpion Star Zone. Outside the Dragon Realm and the God Realm, there were 9 other star zones in the universe. Each star zone was extremely vast, and there were tens of thousands to millions of stars that formed countless beautiful patterns in galaxies. The Scorpion Star Zone was the closest star zone to the Dragon Realm. Although Ji Tianqing could see the Scorpion Star Zone with his naked eye, the distance between the Scorpion Star Zone and the Dragon Realm was at least 3 billion miles. Even with his strength, he would have to fly for half a month to reach the star at the edge of the Scorpion Star Zone. Ji Tianqing flew in the void for a day and a night, gradually leaving the Dragon Realm. At this time, he received another message, Jade Slip. The Jade Slip was still sent by Long Yin. Long Tian, I'm close to the Scorpion Star Zone. I'm on a waste star closest to the Scorpion Star Zone, recuperating in seclusion. When you're about to reach the Scorpion Star Zone, travel 8 million miles to the right. There are 3 barren stars nearby. I'm on the one in the middle. Even though the total number of stars in the 9 major star fields was only a little over 20 million. But in reality, the number of stars in the universe was more than 100 million. 99% of the stars were barren stars without life. There were only a few metals and cultivation resources on them. For example, among the 60,000 stars in the Scorpion Star Zone, only about 600 had intelligent life and various races. The other stars were barren, but they contained all kinds of resources. The forces of the intelligent races used them as resource collection sites and mines. After reading the message in the Jade Slip, Ji Tianqing smiled with relief and continued on his way to the Scorpion Star Zone. Chapter 3899. Time passed quietly. The void was always dark and cold, and it was impossible to tell day from night. Half a month later, Ji Tianxing finally got close to the Scorpio galaxy and was about to land on the planet at the edge. It was a huge planet with a diameter of more than 5 million miles. It was called the Outpost Planet. As the name suggested, it was the outpost to the Scorpio galaxy. The planet contained large amounts of mineral resources, and many experts were stationed there. The Scorpio galaxy had more than 600 planets and more than 1,000 races. Every planet had a ruler. However, the entire galaxy had not been unified. There were two powerful forces fighting for the position of overlord. The Blue Scorpion Divine King, who was sworn brothers with the Golden Crow tribe leader, was the leader of one of the forces. Both forces had sent many guards and Divine King experts to the Outpost Planet to monitor the movements of the Dragon Realm and other galaxies. However, Ji Tianxing stopped when he was a few million miles away from the Outpost Planet. He turned to the right and flew toward the three smaller abandoned planets. The characteristics of these abandoned planets were very obvious. First, they were very small, only about 1 million miles in diameter. Second, the surface of the planet was dimmer. Although there was a metallic glow, there was no divine power covering it. This was the classic example of a barren planet with mineral resources but no life or cultivators. Ji Tianxing flew toward the abandoned planet in the middle. 2 hours later, he landed on the planet. The surface of the abandoned planet was filled with bumpy rock layers that rose and fell like hills. There was not a single plant on the planet, nor was there any air or water. There was also no Big Dipper protective layer. This barren planet was not suitable for the birth and continuation of life. Although Long Yan was recovering in seclusion on this abandoned planet, the planet was 1 million miles in diameter. However, the diameter of the Waystar was 1 million miles, which was quite vast. If not for the fact that Long Yan had told Ji Tianxing where he was hiding in the transmission jade slip. Ji Tianxing would have to spend at least 10 days to search the entire planet and find Long Yan's location. 6 hours later, Ji Tianxing landed in a deep pit that was tens of thousands of miles wide. This huge crater was very obvious on the surface of the planet. At first glance, it was obvious that it was caused by the impact of a meteorite. At the bottom of the deep pit, weathered rocks and shiny metallic ores could be seen everywhere. If he had enough time, Ji Tianxing wouldn't mind using the devouring divine ability to refine this abandoned star and absorb the ores and resources in the star. But he didn't have time to do that now. He released his divine sense to envelop the entire pit and quickly found the mark left behind by Long Yan. He dived into the ground and found a narrow cave in the incomparably hard ore layer. Long Yan, who was in rags and covered in blood, was recuperating in the cave. He was alone and silent, as if he had become one with the darkness. Shua! Ji Tianxing released a gentle divine light, illuminating the narrow cave. Long Yan, who was in the middle of recuperating, was also awakened. He quickly stopped recuperating and opened his eyes. "Brother, you're finally here." Previously, he was fighting alone. He was physically and mentally exhausted and scarred. He was more or less lonely and lost in his heart. Now that he saw Ji Tianxing, he actually felt a sense of familiarity as if he had seen a family member. The anxiety and loss in his heart also disappeared. Ji Tianxing stepped in front of him and stared at his injuries for a moment. Seeing that his external injuries were more serious and the damage to his godhead was lighter, he was relieved. But he still frowned and said to Long Yan, "I know you have the Crimson Dragon Tyrant body and have boundless strength, but you really need to change your fighting style. You can clearly use divine abilities to fight from afar. Why do you have to charge straight in and use your body to resist? If it wasn't for this habit of yours, you wouldn't have suffered so many injuries." Long Yan obviously knew that Ji Tianxing was concerned about him. He smiled and said, "You also know that this is my fighting habit. How can it be changed overnight? I didn't really like fighting from afar. Close combat was more exciting, violent, and effective. Strength, speed, and defense are the strengths of my dragon race. How can I abandon them?" Ji Tianxing sighed helplessly and stopped thinking about this problem. "How are your injuries recovering?" Are there any problems? It's just that the physical injuries are more serious. It's not a big problem. Long Yin waved his hand and did not mind. Ji Tianxing asked again, what about the Golden Crow race's leader and the Blue Scorpion Divine King? Where will they go after returning to the Scorpion Galaxy? Long Yin thought for a moment and said, they don't know that I followed them. They probably didn't expect that I would chase them to the Scorpion Galaxy. So, it's very likely that they returned to the Blue Scorpion Divine King's lair to recuperate. But the Golden Crow race's leader is concerned about the Great Thousand Paradises and the Golden Crow race's forces. He definitely won't stay in the Scorpion Galaxy for too long. As long as his injuries recover, he will definitely return to the Dragon Realm. After all, he's afraid that I'll take the opportunity to take over the Great Thousand Paradises and destroy the Golden Crow race's tens of thousands of years of foundation. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly. Okay, then we'll set off immediately to the Scorpion Galaxy to find the Blue Scorpion Divine King and the Golden Crow race's leader. As for where they are hiding, we'll try to find out when we reach the Scorpion Galaxy. Long Yin wanted to persuade Ji Tianxing to act cautiously. After all, the Scorpion Galaxy was someone else's territory, and it was very dangerous. But on second thought, he and Ji Tianxing were both peak Divine Kings. There should be no opponents in the Scorpion Galaxy. So he nodded and said, okay, then we'll set off now. The two quickly left the cave and returned to the deep pit on the planet's surface. Ji Tianxing let Long Yin stay in the primordial chaos bell and continued to recuperate from his injuries. He flew through the void alone and headed toward the Scorpion Galaxy. 4 hours later, Ji Tianxing arrived near the outpost star. As long as he landed on the outpost star, he would officially enter the Scorpion Galaxy. However, he did not pass by the outpost star. Instead, he changed his direction and entered the Scorpion Galaxy from the side. The guard stationed on the outpost star were patrolling the planet's surface. The Divine Kings were also monitoring the outpost star's movements. However, Ji Tianxing was very far away from them, so it was impossible for him to be discovered. After going around the outpost star, he entered the Scorpion Galaxy and began to travel among the densely packed planets. He did not use the art of invisibility or hide his aura. However, compared to the planets that were millions of miles long, his body was so small that it was negligible. Even if he went straight into the depths of the Scorpion Galaxy, no one could discover him. 7 days later, Ji Tianxing landed on a dark green planet. This planet was called the Thousand-Wood Planet. It was one of the most powerful planets in the periphery of the Scorpion Galaxy. More than 30 races lived on the Thousand-Wood Planet. It was a world of endless forests and grasslands. At the same time, it was also one of the Blue Scorpion Divine King's strongholds. In the entire Scorpion Galaxy, more than 100 planets were under his control. 7 of them were his strongholds. A large number of loyal experts and Divine Kings were stationed there. Chapter 3900. Ji Tianxing had been to various galaxies in his previous life and traveled to countless worlds. But that was to find materials and cultivation resources. He would never stay in a certain galaxy to develop and strengthen his power. After all, there were almost no peak Divine Kings in the 9 galaxies, and it was impossible for a God Emperor to be born. The strongest in the world could only be born in the Dragon Realm and the God Realm. Perhaps the cultivation resources in the 9 galaxies would surpass that of the Dragon Realm and the God Realm. But even if the 9 galaxies could not cultivate peak Divine Kings, the Dragon Realm and the God Realm could. Although Ji Tianxing did not understand the reason, it was the truth. Take the Thousand-Wood Star in front of him, for example, although it was rich in divine power and resources. But the number of Divine Kings in the entire Thousand-Wood Star was less than 100, and the number of high-level Divine Kings could be counted on one hand. Long Yin was more familiar with the situation in the Scorpio Galaxy. He told Ji Tianxing that the Master of the Thousand-Wood Star was an 8th-stage high-level Divine King. Therefore, Ji Tianxing did not have any worries and directly entered the Thousand-Wood Star. The ocean area of the Thousand-Wood Star was very small, and almost 80% of the area was forests and mountains, mixed with countless grasslands. This star had 2 continents called the East and West continents. On each continent, there were dozens of god kingdoms of different sizes. After Tianxing entered the Thousandwood Star, he did not investigate the two continents. He went directly to the depths of the ocean, the extreme north of the two continents. It was a world of endless ice and snow, and the environment was extremely harsh, and there were even monarch god realm monsters hiding there. So, it was very desolate, and few people went there. But Long Yin knew that on the endless ice mountains in the extreme north, there was a heavenly palace. The master of the heavenly palace was the overlord of the Thousandwood Star, who called himself divine King Thousandwood. If the Golden Crow clan leader did not want to leave the Dragon Realm for too long, he would not go to the depths of the Scorpio Galaxy. He would most likely go into seclusion on the Thousandwood Star to heal. After his injuries were mostly healed and his condition stabilized, he would return to the Dragon Realm, which was the shortest and most time-saving way. The cold wind whistled, and snow swirled in the air. The area within a radius of 100,000 miles was a world of ice and snow. Scattered icebergs stood on the endless ice field. The sky was covered by leaden clouds, gloomy and depressing. This was the end of the ice field of the far north. An ice mountain that was tens of thousands of feet tall, as if it was connected to the heavens and the earth, stood on the vast ice plains. The iceberg was steep, and there was no path leading down the mountain. Observing the surroundings of the iceberg, it was full of cliffs and abysses formed by solid ice. There were no traces of man-made excavation or modification. However, at the peak of the ice mountain, there was a flat land with a radius of 20 miles. The frozen ground was as smooth as a mirror and covered with pure white snow. A dazzling divine palace sat there, surrounded by thousands of guards. There was also a powerful king-grade divine array protecting the palace. At this moment, whether it was the guards on duty or on patrol, they were all very vigilant and alert to their surroundings at all times. There were also 8 godly king experts sitting in the divine palace, monitoring the situation in the surroundings. Inside the divine palace, in a secret chamber hidden in the depths, a thin, golden-haired old man in a golden robe was lying on a bed carved from cold jade, silently healing his injuries. The array in the secret chamber had been activated, flashing with 5-colored divine light, constantly releasing majestic divine power, which was absorbed by the golden-haired old man. His face was ghastly pale, and there were a few hideous scars on his cheeks and neck. It was obvious that they were left behind not long ago. As for his thin and weak body, it was covered with scars. However, these were only external injuries, which were not life-threatening. The most serious injuries were his internal organs and godhead. His internal organs had long been shattered, and his godhead had cracked. His divine power was very weak, and his mind was in a daze. If not for his strong willpower, he would have fainted long ago. Of course, it was also fortunate that he had recuperated in this divine palace for 10 days, which allowed his injuries to recover to this extent. 10 days ago, when he had fled to this divine palace, his injuries were much worse than now. The secret chamber was silent, and no one disturbed the golden-haired old man's recuperation. The door to the secret chamber was guarded by 2 mid-level godly kings. Apart from their leader, no one else could approach. 300 meters away from the secret chamber, there was an exquisite and elegant study. At this moment, 2 godly kings were conversing in the study. Sitting on the ice jade throne was a blue-robed, malicious-looking man from another race. This man had the appearance of a human, but his facial features were extremely ferocious, and his hands were like sharp claws. Most importantly, he had a third hand behind his back, which was a barb-like spike. This 9th-level godly king foreign man was one of the 2 overlords of the Scorpio Galaxy, the Blue Scorpion Godly King. Standing in front of him and reporting to him was a 2-headed foreign godly king in a blue robe. This godly king was the ruler of the Thousandwood planet, known as the Thousandwood Godly King. He was very respectful to the Blue Scorpion Godly King and reported in a low voice, "Alliance Lord, as per your orders, we've sent more people to Outpost Planet. They're constantly patrolling and paying close attention to the movements in the Dragon Realm. If there's any abnormality, they'll immediately report it. In the extreme northern icy plains, I've also sent over 10,000 scouts and guards to patrol the area within 100,000 li of the palace. As for the palace's defense, I've also urgently mobilized people and increased it by more than 3 times. Don't worry, the Heavenspan Palace is currently the safest place. No one can invade this place without alerting us. After the Thousand-Wood Godly King finished his report, the Blue Scorpion Godly King nodded in satisfaction and warned, "You've done well. When this matter is over, I'll reward you. You should know that the Golden Crow clan leader is my sworn brother and our most honored guest. Not only is he a peak godly king, but he also has a high chance of becoming the Dragon Emperor and dominating the Dragon Realm. With the Golden Crow clan leader's help, it's only a matter of time before we defeat our opponents and completely control the Scorpio Galaxy." The Thousand-Wood Godly King hurriedly bowed and said, "I understand. Don't worry, Alliance Lord, I'll definitely treat the Golden Crow clan leader well." After hesitating for a moment, he couldn't help but ask, "Alliance Lord, I don't understand. The Thousand-Wood Star is located in the periphery of the galaxy, so it's actually not very safe. Why don't you bring the Golden Crow clan leader into the depths of the galaxy and return to our Alliance's nest? That's the safest place. Even if the Dragon Realm's experts want to take revenge, they won't dare to rashly set foot there." The Blue Scorpion Godly King waved his hand and said, "What do you know? The Golden Crow clan leader is only temporarily recuperating here. It won't take too long. Once he's mostly recovered and out of danger, he'll rush back to the Dragon Realm to take charge of the situation. Our foundation is in the Scorpio Galaxy, and his foundation is in the Dragon Realm. We can't lose him. In short, don't ask what you shouldn't ask. The Golden Crow clan leader will leave in a month at most, and your mission will be completed then." Chapter 3901. Blue Scorpion Divine King's words not only answered Divine King Thousand-Wood's doubts, but also reassured him. At least he knew that Golden Crow clan leader and Blue Scorpion Divine King were only here temporarily and would leave soon. As such, he only needed to perform well during this period of time and be vigilant. After Blue Scorpion Divine King and Golden Crow clan leader left, he would still be the overlord of Thousand-Wood Star, and his power would not be affected. Most importantly, Blue Scorpion Divine King would still have rewards. With a satisfied mood, Divine King Thousand-Wood left the study room and continued to carry out his orders and mobilize his men. However, as soon as he left the Divine Palace, a messenger guard rushed over with a hurried expression and blocked his path. Reporting to Star-Lord, "We have lost contact with the 3 patrol teams in the ice fields behind the God Palace." Divine King Thousand-Wood was only a title to outsiders. The citizens of Thousand-Wood Star all addressed him as Lord Star-Lord. Suddenly hearing this news, Divine King Thousand-Wood's expression froze and his eyes flashed with intense vigilance. 3 patrol teams and over 60 Monarch God experts have lost contact with all of them? What about Commander Gu? Something happened to his team. Why didn't he go check on the situation? The messenger guard hurriedly explained, "Master Star-Lord, just half an hour ago, Commander Gu received this news. He brought 20 personal guards and rushed over to investigate personally. But we have lost contact with Commander Gu now." Commander Gu was a guard commander and a 3rd-degree God King expert. He had always been highly regarded by Divine King Thousand-Wood. Divine King Thousand-Wood sensed that something was amiss and asked in a deep voice, "Go to the Tribute Spirit Hall and see if Commander Gu's Soul Jade token has shattered. Also, pass down the order for everyone to tighten their defenses and protect the God Palace." "Yes." The messenger guard bowed and immediately turned to leave. Divine King Thousand-Wood frowned and thought for a moment before shouting again, "Come back. Go gather the 4 commanders and follow me to investigate the situation. Later, report this matter to Lord Alliance Master and inform me immediately if there is any news." "Understood." The messenger guard bowed again and quickly flew off to carry out the order. The 4 guard commanders were very fast. When God King Thousand-Wood reached the plaza in front of the palace and looked at the icy plains in the north, He was pondering with a gloomy expression. The four commanders had already arrived. For the time being, they didn't know what had happened. However, when they saw God King Thousand Wood's solemn expression, they guessed that something bad was going to happen. Go! God King Thousand Wood did not explain further. He immediately led the four commanders into the sky and flew towards the wilderness in the north. Along the way, the four God King commanders followed behind him. One of them could not help but ask, "Star-Lord, what happened? Is there any movement in the north?" Another commander chimed in, "Tens of thousands of miles to the north is the end of the ice field. The defenses there are the weakest. Who will want to break in from there?" God King Thousand Wood did not plan to hide it from them. He explained, "I just received news that we lost contact with the 3 patrol teams in the north. Commander Gu went to check on the situation, and something happened to him." The 4 commanders were shocked, and their expressions and eyes became solemn. Something actually happened to Commander Gu? He's a 3rd-degree divine king. Who invaded this place? It must be a divine king expert. Star-Lord, could it be that the invader is related to the Alliance Master and the Golden Crow clan leader? Isn't it obvious? It must be the person who is chasing after the Golden Crow clan leader. Isn't the Golden Crow clan leader a peak divine king? The expert who dares to chase after him should at least be a peak divine king. If it's really a peak divine king who invaded, wouldn't we be dead meat? The 4 commanders were whispering to each other as they discussed. When one of the commanders said the last sentence, everyone fell silent. Their expressions became extremely horrified. Even God King Thousand Wood was stunned. A smear of shock and worry flashed past his eyes. However, as the Star-Lord, how could he show fear at this time? Moreover, this was just the 4 commanders' wild guess. They did not even see the invader's shadow, and they were frightened. That was too embarrassing. After a moment of silence, God King Thousand Wood ordered sternly, "All of you shut up. A peak divine king is not a nobody. How can you meet him whenever you want? Whoever dares to talk nonsense and disturb the army's morale, this king will definitely punish severely." The 4 commanders kept quiet out of fear. They did not dare to talk nonsense anymore. The 5 divine kings maintained their silence. They flew above the ice plains as fast as lightning and released their divine senses to search the surroundings. Originally, God King Thousand Wood's target was 80,000 miles away. That was the end of the ice plains. However, they had just flown 20,000 miles when God King Thousand Wood's divine senses detected that there were over a dozen corpses lying on the ice plains to the front left. Over here, God King Thousand Wood immediately led the 4 commanders and flew towards the front left. The 5 people flew another 20,000 miles before landing near the pile of corpses. On the ice plains covered in white snow, there were over a dozen dark red bloodstains scattered. More than half of them were already covered by the snow. Those dozen over corpses had long stiffened and were almost frozen into ice sculptures. However, most of the corpses were intact. Even the armor on their bodies and the swords in their hands were also intact. God King Thousand Wood and the 4 commanders could tell at a glance that those dozen over corpses were Commander Gu and his personal guards. 16 high-level Divine Lord personal guards and Commander Gu, who was at the 3rd level of the Divine King realm, had all died here. God King Thousand would check the wounds on the corpses and realize that every corpse was killed in one move. The wounds were usually in between the eyebrows, forehead, skull, back of the head, and other vital areas. Moreover, the wounds were extremely small. There were a few corpses that did not bleed and had no wounds on their bodies. However, their divine sparks were shattered. Sensing this, God King Thousand Wood's brows were tightly knitted together. His eyes became increasingly solemn and fearful. To be able to kill Commander Gu in one move, he must be at least a 6th-level divine king. There's even a possibility that he's a high-level divine king. God King Thousand Wood was even more worried, and the uneasiness in his heart grew stronger. The 4 commanders looked at Commander Gu's corpse. They were filled with grief and indignation. However, they felt fear from the bottom of their hearts. After a moment of silence, God King Thousand Wood ordered in a deep voice, "Move their corpses back and bury them after this matter is over." The 4 commanders acknowledged his order and hurriedly went to collect the corpses. After they were done, one of them asked, "Star-Lord, are we still going to continue heading north?" "There's no need," God King Thousandwood said expressionlessly. "The invaders have already killed their way here. They're near us now. There's no point in continuing north. Return to the God Palace immediately. I want to gather all my forces to protect the God Palace." After he finished speaking, he led the 4 commanders into the sky and returned to the God Palace in the south. However, just as they flew into the sky, they saw 2 figures appearing out of thin air above the ice plains. Book Guest Residence Reading Website. Chapter 3902. The 2 figures were tall and handsome. On the left was a handsome youth in a white robe. He had sharp eyebrows and bright eyes. His cultivation realm could not be determined. He was emitting a mysterious pressure. On the right was a youth in a crimson armor and a purple cape. He wore blood-red gloves covered with dragon scales. There were some wounds on his face and neck, but it did not affect his battle. The murderous aura in his eyes was even denser. Similarly, no one could determine the cultivation realm of this youth in crimson armor. But Divine King Thousandwood knew that there was only one kind of person he could not see through. That was a peak Divine King. At this moment, Divine King Thousandwood's heart twitched violently. A trace of despair flashed across his eyes. He was very clear what this meant. The 4 guard commanders were also dumbfounded, although they could not see through the cultivation realm of the 2 youths. They knew that to be able to make the Star-Lord's expression so ugly and his eyes so desperate, the 2 youths were most likely peak Divine Kings. Damn it, the Star-Lord just said that peak Divine Kings are not cats and dogs. They're not easy to meet. Now, 2 of them appeared all of a sudden. It's over. We are dead meat. They are indeed here to kill the Golden Crow tribe leader. 2 of them came at once. The 4 commanders' hearts were beating like drums. Their eyes were filled with fear. They stared at the 2 youths and subconsciously gripped their swords and sabers tightly. They were ready to unleash the final attack at any time. Fortunately, Divine King Thousandwood was a Star-Lord who controlled a star. He quickly calmed down. He raised his hand slightly, indicating for the 4 commanders not to act rashly. Then, he bowed to the 2 youths and asked, "Are the 2 of you here to kill the Golden Crow tribe leader?" The youth in crimson armor and the youth in white robe exchanged glances and communicated secretly. "Long Tian, this person knows our intention. That means that the Golden Crow tribe leader is indeed hiding here to recuperate." You guessed right. Without a doubt, these 2 youths were Long Yin and Ji Tianxing. Previously, when they came to the ice field and saw many guards patrolling, they realized that there was something wrong with Heavenspan Divine Palace. Now, Divine King Thousandwood's words confirmed their guess. Ji Tianxing didn't say anything. Long Yin stared at God King Thousandwood and sneered. "You're God King Thousandwood?" He was quite knowledgeable. "Although you already know the answer, I'm willing to answer you." "That's right." With the answer confirmed, the last trace of hope in God King Thousandwood's heart vanished. He looked at the 2 young men and said calmly, "If it's possible, I'd like to ask the 2 seniors to spare our lives. After all, we're just following orders and have no enmity with the 2 seniors." Long Yin warmed up his hands and swung his blood-red blood-flame gloves. He sneered, "How can there be no enmity? We've just killed dozens of your subordinates." Divine King Thousandwood hurriedly lowered his head and cupped his fists in apology. They were blind and offended the 2 seniors. They deserved to be killed. "Haha, interesting." Long Yin raised his eyebrows. Ji Tianxing also smiled faintly. Seeing that the situation had taken a turn for the better, Divine King Thousandwood continued, "This is between the 2 seniors and the leader of the Golden Crow tribe. We don't know about it and don't want to interfere. As long as the 2 seniors let us go, we'll leave Thousandwood Star now and won't interfere." Ji Tianxing looked at Long Yin and asked telepathically, "Didn't you say that Divine King Thousandwood is Blue Scorpion Divine King's loyal subordinate? He's so fickle and cowardly. Where's his loyalty?" Long Yin explained telepathically, "Loyal subordinates are only relative to other Star-Lords. If there's no threat to his life, Divine King 1000 will still obey Blue Scorpion Divine King. But their loyalty is cheap, and they won't sacrifice their lives for it. It's not strange that the alien races in the major star fields are like this. After all, their culture and ideas are different from ours. Tianqing nodded to show that he understood. Long Yin then said to Divine King Thousandwood, I understand your feelings and know that you don't want to lose your lives for nothing. But I don't trust you and can't let you go. Divine King Thousandwood frowned as his face turned uglier. The four commanders were also shocked. Their hearts, which had just been relieved, were in their throats again. Their eyes were filled with grief, anger, and despair. Long Yin waved his blood-flame glove and shot out 4 beams of scarlet divine light that hit the 4 commanders. Bam! 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 After a series of muffled sounds, the 4 commanders' bodies stiffened and fell to the ice plains, unconscious. Divine King Thousandwood's nerves were stretched to the limit as the divine power in his body reached its peak. He was about to teleport away. At this moment, Long Yan's voice was heard. I can spare your lives, but to avoid unnecessary trouble, I'll have to ask you to sleep here for 2 days. Divine King Thousandwood was taken aback as he quickly used his divine senses to check on the 4 commanders. He was relieved when he found that they were not dead and had only fainted. Thank you, Senior, for sparing our lives. He slowly dispersed the divine power in his body and bowed deeply. Long Yin did not speak further. He waved his fist and shot out 2 beams of divine light that hit Divine King Thousandwood. Bam! Divine King Thousandwood also suffered a heavy blow to his divine soul. He blacked out and fell to the ice plains as his consciousness fell into a deep sleep. The icy plain fell into silence. Only the heavy snowflakes were falling silently. Swoosh! Swoosh! Tianqing and Long Yan's figures disappeared as they rushed towards the south, heading straight for the ski-reached Divine Palace on the Ice Mountain. A few breaths later, the two appeared above the Ice Mountain and looked down at the ski-reached Divine Palace on the mountain peak. The two of them didn't hide their figures, nor did they hide their auras. They just appeared in the open like that. The thousands of guards around the Divine Palace and the 8 Divine Kings guarding the Divine Palace immediately discovered their tracks. Suddenly, the sound of horns and urgent shouts could be heard around the Divine Palace. Hundreds of guards rushed over from all directions and surrounded Tianqing and Long Yin in the sky. At the same time, on the ice plains around the Ice Mountain, there were teams after teams rushing back to the Divine Palace under orders. Tianqing and Long Yin ignored the hundreds of guards around them, as their attention was on the ski-reached Divine Palace. The two people's divine senses clearly detected that there were 10 Divine King powerhouses auras in the Divine Palace. 8 middle-level Divine Kings were guarding every corner of the Divine Palace. At this moment, they were all gathered in the main hall. A high God King in blue robes, with a vicious face and 3 hands, hurried to a secret room with 8 other God Kings. In the secret room protected by a divine array, there was a chaotic aura of a peak Divine King. Tianqing and Long Yin looked at each other and smiled. Found him. He is indeed here. Looks like you injured him quite badly. His divine spark is probably cracked. The two of them talked cheerfully and wittily, ignoring the many guards. However, their divine senses were constantly monitoring the many Divine Kings in the Divine Palace. They detected that Blue Scorpion Divine King seemed to have used some divine artifact to keep the heavily injured Golden Crow tribe leader. Then, Blue Scorpion Divine King led 8 Divine King guards and wanted to escape from the back of the Divine Palace. Chapter 3903. Blue Scorpion Godly King doesn't dare to show his face and wants to slip away. Long Yin frowned, looking at the Heaven-span God Palace with a look of contempt. Tianqing said with a faint smile, he's still considered smart, knowing that if he slips away now, there's still that tiny bit of chance. If he fights with us for a few dozen moves and flees after getting injured, there'll be no chance at all. The two chatted while using their divine senses to monitor the activity inside the Heaven-span God Palace. seeing Blue Scorpion Godly King bring 8 Godly King guards and sneak into the underground of the God Palace, about to activate a divine array. Long Yin raised his brows. That fellow is rather cunning, having long set up a teleportation grand array in the underground palace. We should take action. If we let him slip away through the teleportation grand array, it'll be over. Don't panic, he can't escape. Ji Tianqing smiled, crossing hundreds of thousands of feet with a step, passing through the encirclement of many guards and appearing in front of the Heavenspan God Palace's gates. Buzz! The Heavenspan God Palace's defensive grand array had long been activated. Receiving the impact of his divine power, it was instantly activated. A massive oval-shaped light barrier enveloped the entire Heavenspan God Palace, lighting up with 5-color divine light. This was a high-grade, king-level divine array, something that thousand-wood godly kings spent decades of painstaking effort to set up. Under normal circumstances, with Ji Tianqing's array Dao attainments, it would take at least 15 minutes to crack this divine array. And within this 15 minutes, Blue Scorpion Godly King would have long activated the teleportation grand array and fled with the 8 Godly King guards. This was the tiny bit of chance that Ji Tianqing mentioned, and also where Blue Scorpion Godly King was smart. Swish! Long Yin also teleported hundreds of thousands of feet, breaking through the encirclement of several hundred guards, and appeared in front of the God Palace's gates. Looking at the grand array with a revolving halo, he clenched both fists and said in a deep voice, "At most 20 breaths, they can activate the teleportation grand array and escape this place. Cracking the defensive grand array is too time-consuming. I'll directly blast it open." Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said, "You're injured. Better let me do it." Actually, this was only one reason. More importantly, Long Yin did not observe this defensive grand array. He only wanted to borrow the power of the blood flame gloves to forcefully blast open the grand array. And Long Yin's divine king, the God Palace's head to the God Palace's palace. His rights, two's pointed, his rights, his was to fingers. Endless divine power burst out from his 2 fingers, shining with dazzling golden light. Crack, crack, of T. S crack. S is God is S is to is. Rights two's A's is that's is S is S at this time. The hundreds of guards came back to their senses and rushed over with murderous intent. But they were too slow. By the time they passed through the gap in the array and entered the divine palace, Ji Tianqing and Long Yin had already entered the underground palace. In the dimly lit underground palace, the ground was engraved with dense array patterns, which were used to gather the divine power of heaven and earth. In the middle of the underground palace, there was an altar with a radius of 300 meters. It was built with expensive materials and gems. That was the teleportation array. At this moment, the Blue Scorpion God King was standing in the middle of the array with 8 God King guards scattered around him. They were all working together to activate the teleportation array. Judging from the energy fluctuations of the altar and the white light emitted by the runes, they had already activated more than half of it. In at most 5 breaths of time, the teleportation array would be successfully activated. Unfortunately, he was only 1 step away, but he would never be able to complete it. Swoosh! Swish! With a flash of white light, Ji Tianqing and Long Yin appeared in the underground palace, standing on top of the altar. The 2 of them looked down at Blue Scorpion God King and the others, sneering. The Blue Scorpion God King and the 8 God King guards were all startled. Deep shock appeared on their faces. How can they be so fast? Damn it! The defensive array of the Divine Palace is actually so weak. It's over. Our teleportation array hasn't been activated yet. These thoughts flashed through the minds of the God Kings at the same time. The Blue Scorpion God King's eyes were filled with anger and helplessness. He could only stop casting and put all his attention on Ji Tianqing and Long Yin. He knew that this battle was unavoidable. But the 8 God King guards were still unwilling to give up struggling. They were still desperately casting spells to activate the divine array. truly reckless and reckless. Long Yin frowned. With a cold snort, he raised his hands and fired out 8 beams of divine light. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The divine light that contained over 100 laws turned into 8 sharp swords, stabbing at the 8 God King guards. 4 of them realized that things were not good and retreated decisively. As for the other 4 God Kings, it was too late to dodge even if they wanted to. Bang, 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 bang. A series of muffled sounds rang out. Divine light flickered on the altar as blood splattered. The 4 God Kings who fled in time were heavily injured by the sword light. Their bodies were covered in blood as they cried out in pain. The other 4 God Kings who reacted slower were unable to avoid being hit in their vitals. Their hearts or heads were pierced by the sword light. 2 divine bodies were destroyed. Only their divine spark survived. The other 2 were the most unlucky. Their heads exploded, their divine sparks crumbled, and they directly perished. Immediately, the underground palace was filled with a thick stench of blood. The 2 divine sparks that survived and the 4 heavily injured God Kings all shrunk behind the blue scorpion God King, looking at Ji Tianxing and Long Yin with fear. And at this time, several hundred divine Lord Realm guards rushed into the underground palace like a tide and just happened to see this scene. Kiki, seeing Long Yin instantly kill 2 God Kings and heavily injure 6 God Kings the moment he attacked. Many guards were filled with fear, their teeth chattering. No matter how many guards there were, they were scared out of their wits. They all shrunk into a dark corner of the underground palace, not daring to go forward and shout. In fact, if not for the blue scorpion God King's presence, those few hundred guards would have turned around and fled long ago. The blue scorpion God King saw his subordinates being killed and heavily injured with his own eyes, but he did not even have the courage to block or help, because Ji Tianxing, who had not made a move all this time, had already locked onto his aura. The moment he made the slightest move, he would definitely be met with a calamity. The atmosphere in the underground palace was heavy and oppressive. It seemed to be even colder than before. The blue scorpion God King took a few deep breaths before calming down. He said in a low voice, "Long Yin, you actually chased us all the way from the Dragon Realm. Is there a need to kill us all?" Long Yin spread out his hands and said indifferently, "This king said before that I cannot kill the Golden Crow tribe leader as long as he admits defeat, surrenders, and swears a heavenly law oath. It was you who refused to believe me. Are you blaming this king?" The blue scorpion God King frowned fiercely, but he was speechless. He glanced at Ji Tianxing and asked Long Yin, "Who is this person? Where did you find another peak God King to help?" Long Yin said with a cold smile, "Blue Scorpion God King, you don't have the qualifications to know this. Enough nonsense. Hand over the Golden Crow tribe leader." Chapter 3904. Long Yin's words sounded very strange. Those who did not know the whole story would think that Blue Scorpion God King had kidnapped the Golden Crow clan leader and that he had come to rescue him. But the truth was exactly the opposite. Blue Scorpion God King was silently accumulating his divine power. His body was surrounded by deep blue lightning, and his hands were holding a pair of divine hooks. He stared at Long Yin with a sharp gaze and shouted coldly, "The Golden Crow clan leader is this king's sworn brother. Even if this king dies here, I will not hand him over to you. Is that so?" Long Yin's gaze and tone became even colder. "Since you are so loyal, then die for him." Long Yin gradually clenched his fists, and the blood-flame gloves also lit up with a dark red light. A formless killing aura instantly filled the underground palace, causing the hundreds of guards to turn pale with fear. Wait a moment. Blue Scorpion God King suddenly raised his hand to stop Long Yin and shouted, "These soldiers are innocent. We will fight in outer space." Hearing his words, the hundreds of guards in the underground palace were so moved that they were about to cry. Alliance Master could not even protect himself, but he did not forget to fight for their lives. This made them respect Blue Scorpion God King even more. If Alliance Master could survive this calamity, they would definitely be even more loyal. Long Yin glanced at Blue Scorpion God King and sneered, "Blue Scorpion God King, who kills people like scything flax, actually cares about the lives of your subordinates? Don't play tricks. Do you want to take the chance to escape? You should know that you have no chance. Blue Scorpion God King's eyes flashed with hatred, and he felt even more despair. His thoughts had been seen through by Long Yin. Even his last chance to escape was cut off. How could he not feel despair? However, Blue Scorpion God King did not expect that Ji Tianqing would speak at this time. This king can promise you that we will fight in outer space. Long Yin was slightly surprised and turned to look at Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing gave him a reassuring look, indicating that there was no problem. Long Yin thought that it made sense. Blue Scorpion God King's 8 God King bodyguards were all crippled, so there was no way they could escape. The Blue Scorpion God King let out a sigh of relief and looked at Ji Tianqing in surprise. But he didn't say much. His figure flashed and left the divine palace, flying high into the sky. He waved his 2 hooks and tore apart the dark clouds in the sky, creating a 10-meter-long spatial rift. Swish! He passed through the spatial crack and entered the void in a flash. Ji Tianqing and Long Yin followed closely behind. They flew high into the sky and passed through the crack into the void. As for the 6 heavily injured God Kings and the several hundred guards, they remained in the underground palace. When Blue Scorpion Divine King, Ji Tianqing, and Long Yin left, everyone let out a sigh of relief and left the underground palace. This was Blue Scorpion God King's last chance to escape. Just as he entered the cold and gloomy void, he took out a bronze compass the size of a wash basin. This item originated from ancient times and was the Great Star Compass refined by a peak God King. It was a high-grade, king-tier divine artifact. This divine artifact could gather the power of endless stars and travel in the void at the speed of light. Furthermore, when the Great Star Compass's power was pushed to the limit, it could teleport to the nearest star. Of course, using the Great Star Compass to teleport once would require it to hibernate for a few hundred years before it could recover. For close to 10,000 years, Blue Scorpion God King had always treated the Great Star Compass as his trump card. He had only used it a few times to save his life at crucial moments. In the underground palace's teleportation array, Ji Tianqing and Long Yin were staring at him, so he naturally didn't have the chance to use the Great Star Compass. Therefore, he feigned civility and requested to go to the outer realm to fight for this short opportunity. Long Yin rejected him, causing him to be in complete despair. But Ji Tianqing agreed to his request, reigniting his hope. Swish! Blue Scorpion God King held the rusty Great Star Compass with both hands and did not hesitate to pour all his divine power into the compass. Immediately, the Great Star Compass lit up with dazzling starlight and released a vast and mighty star divine power. It looked like the Great Star Compass's power was about to be pushed to the limit and bring Blue Scorpion God King away from the 1,000 Jupiter star to teleport to a nearby star. His divine power was rapidly depleting, and his entire body became very weak. But he was extremely excited, and his eyes were filled with hope for survival. He was laughing and shouting in his heart. Ha! So what if you're a peak God King? You are too arrogant. This king wants to escape now. What can you do to me? As long as he used the Great Star Compass to escape from the 1,000 Jupiter star and teleport to a nearby star, he would really escape. No matter how strong Ji Tianqing and Long Yin were, they couldn't cross tens of millions of miles and chase to another star. However, just as Blue Scorpion God King was filled with excitement and couldn't control himself, something unexpected happened. Swish! A pitch-black ancient divine bell flew over from not far away and floated above his head. The divine bell released a dazzling white divine light that poured down like a curtain, instantly enveloping the surrounding 50 kilometers. That white divine light contained an extremely powerful spatial energy that sealed off the surrounding 50 kilometers. Blue Scorpion God King and the Great Star Compass were both suppressed by the divine power. Even though the Great Star Compass's power suddenly erupted, and a soaring starlight enveloped Blue Scorpion God King's figure, the Great Star Compass did not teleport him away. However, the Great Star Compass didn't bring him away, instead teleporting him to a nearby star. Blue Scorpion God King was still holding the great star compass, motionless in place. How can this be? The Blue Scorpion God King was dumbfounded. His excitement turned into shock and despair. He simply could not believe that the great star compass had lost its effect. It must be that light curtain that sealed off this space. I understand now. It's that divine bell. The panic-stricken Blue Scorpion God King looked around, and in the end, he looked at the divine bell above his head and guessed the reason. Then, he saw Ji Tianxing and Long Yin fly over from not far away and land outside the white light curtain. The two had faint sneers on their faces as they calmly looked at Blue Scorpion God King. That faint sneer was filled with mockery and disdain in Blue Scorpion God King's eyes. His heart felt like it had fallen into an ice cellar, and his entire body was covered in despair. Why is it like this? I clearly could have escaped. Blue Scorpion God King looked as if he had lost his soul as he muttered in a daze. His lifeless gaze passed through the rippling and twisting white light curtain to look at Ji Tianxing and Long Yan's figures. He felt extremely helpless. Ji Tianxing expressionlessly said, "Your strength limits your imagination. The escape methods you can think of are actually already used by this king many years ago. In addition, in front of a peak God King and a top-quality King Gray Divine artifact, you don't have the slightest hope of escaping." At this moment, Blue Scorpion God King finally understood that the Black Divine Bell was a top-quality King Gray Divine artifact. The last trace of hope in his heart was extinguished, and he completely gave up on the idea of escaping. Chapter 3905. I can't win against you. You can kill me or torture me as you wish. Blue Scorpion God King put away the great astral disc with a dejected expression and said with a hunched back. Long Yin stared at him with a sharp gaze and said in a deep voice, "Hand over the Golden Crow Patriarch and I'll spare your life." Are you serious? Blue Scorpion God King's eyes, which were already filled with despair, revealed a trace of surprise and joy. He thought that Long Yin and Ji Tianxing would definitely kill him and the Golden Crow Patriarch after going through so much trouble. However, he did not expect that the other party would leave him with a chance to live. Of course it's true. Long Yin frowned and said in a deep voice, "Hand over the Golden Crow Patriarch and I'll let you go." Blue Scorpion God King was still a little hesitant and said, "I don't dare to believe your words easily unless you swear to the heavens." Long Yin immediately sneered and said in a contemptuous tone, "Your life and death are in our hands. Whether you believe it or not, do you have a right to choose?" Blue Scorpion God King was instantly speechless. That's right, he was now a fish on the chopping block. How could he have the right to bargain? If he did not believe Long Yin and did not hand over the Golden Crow Patriarch, he would definitely die. If he chose to believe Long Yin, he might really be able to live. After deliberating for a moment, Blue Scorpion God King asked again, "I can believe you, but you will definitely kill the Golden Crow Patriarch, right?" Long Yin frowned and said in a cold tone, "How to deal with the Golden Crow Patriarch is my business. If you continue to spout nonsense, I'll kill you right now." Calm down, calm down. Blue Scorpion God King hurriedly waved his hands and begged for mercy. He dawdled for a moment before gritting his teeth and making up his mind to open the internal space of the divine hook. Swoosh! A thin figure wrapped in a blue light appeared in front of him. Within the blue light was a golden-haired old man in a golden robe. He was covered in wounds, and his aura was chaotic and weak. Clearly, this golden-haired old man was the Golden Crow Patriarch. His injuries were still very serious, but he was not unconscious and was already awake. As the blue light dissipated, he stood in the void and looked expressionlessly at Blue Scorpion God King. That pair of deep and aged eyes carried a trace of deep disappointment and helplessness. The Blue Scorpion God King was filled with guilt and did not dare to meet the Golden Crow Patriarch's gaze. He could only turn his head and say in a low voice, "Big brother, I'm sorry." The chief of the Golden Crow tribe retracted his gaze and no longer looked at him. At this moment, G Primordial Chaos Primordial Bell. The curtain, of course, the Scorpion God King's tea. Blue Scorpion God King secretly sighed in relief and hurriedly fled into the depths of the void, swiftly distancing himself from the Golden Crow Patriarch, Long Yin, and Ji Tianxing. What he was worried about did not happen. Long Yin and Ji Tianxing did not stop him. After escaping for tens of thousands of miles, he stopped in the void and quietly observed the situation. The Golden Crow Patriarch faced Long Yin and Ji Tianxing calmly and said, "Long Yin, even though I was very cautious, I still underestimated you." He was currently at his weakest. His combat strength was less than 30% of his peak. Therefore, he did not have any thoughts of resisting or escaping. He knew that no matter how he tried to escape, it would be futile. He had already accepted his fate and appeared even more carefree. Long Yin looked at him and said with a smile, "Back then, you and Patriarch Lu Wu lost to me. Now, without the help of Uncle Sky Dragon and Uncle Black Dragon, you still lost. Therefore, this is fate. I am a Crimson Dragon Emperor. This is the choice of the heavens." The Golden Crow Patriarch obviously did not want to talk about the past. He was also not like a normal divine king who would refuse to admit defeat and curse. He appeared to be very calm. He looked at Long Yin and then looked at Ji Tianxing and asked, "Your helper is also a peak divine king? Why does he look so unfamiliar?" In his impression, the Crimson Dragon continent did not have a fourth peak divine king, and it was impossible for him to be so young. Unfamiliar. Long Yin raised his eyebrows and said with a playful smile, "He is my good brother, Uncle Sky Dragon's only disciple, Long Tian. It's you." The Golden Crow Patriarch's pupils contracted, and he revealed an extremely shocked expression. He stared at Ji Tianxing. "You disappeared for more than 1,000 years and became a peak divine king? That Long Tian from Star Source Continent is you?" Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and did not say much. After all, he did not know the Golden Crow Patriarch and did not have any relationship. The Golden Crow Patriarch closed his eyes in despair and revealed a bitter smile on his face. "More than a year ago, I heard about what happened in Star Source Continent. I originally thought that you would stay in Star Source Continent and spend more than 100 years to gradually conquer the entire continent. Ha! I should have known that Long Yin would definitely ask you for help when he encountered such a predicament. Since both of you joined hands, then I have no regrets in losing." Ji Tianxing said calmly, "The Dragon Clan is the king of all beasts after all. Even if they were punished by heaven, it is still their destiny. Otherwise, why would the demon realm be called the Dragon Realm? It is impossible for the Golden Crow clan to ascend to the throne. Even if I did not help Long Yin, you are destined to not succeed." The Golden Crow Patriarch only smiled and did not refute. Although he did not agree with this logic and did not feel that the Dragon Clan was destined, he always believed that no clan would prosper forever. Even the Dragon Clan would be defeated and die. But he was the loser now and did not have the right to say these words. "Long Yin, you just said Patriarch Lu Wu was also defeated?" The Golden Crow Patriarch recalled Long Yan's words and could not help but ask. Long Yan did not hide and nodded. "That's right. Long Tian had already infiltrated Purple Cloud Grotto Heaven and finished off the Lu Wu clan long before I chased after you. When you escaped from the Dragon Realm, the Lu Wu clan's army of millions had already retreated." The Golden Crow Patriarch took a deep look at Long Tian and said with a shocked expression, "The Lu Wu clan's power is not any weaker than the divine Fire Grotto Heaven. It is hard to believe that you actually infiltrated Purple Cloud Grotto Heaven alone and killed Patriarch Lu Wu. Your current strength and methods are not much different from your master, Heaven-Sealing Dragon Emperor." Ji Tianxing shook his head and said calmly, "Patriarch Lu Wu is not dead, but he will not fight for the position of Dragon Emperor in the future." "What?" The Golden Crow Patriarch was stunned. "You didn't kill him? Then how can he withdraw his army and promise not to fight for the position of Dragon Emperor?" Ji Tianxing gave a meaningful smile. "You will know the answer soon." Long Yin had a tacit understanding with him. Without needing him to signal, he took out a jade slip and threw it in front of the Golden Crow Patriarch. "Swear a heavenly Tao oath according to this jade slip, and our feud will be considered settled." The Golden Crow Patriarch did not take the jade slip and was stunned again. His expression was even more stunned. Long Yin, what do you mean? You won't kill me? Long Yin smiled and said, killing you is only the last resort. If there is any way to end the feud without killing you, then I am of course willing to try. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 3906. The leader of the Golden Crow tribe did not believe that Long Yin would be so kind as to spare his life. No matter how sincere Long Yin's tone was, he was still on guard. There was only one thought in his mind. Why didn't Long Yin kill me? How can he not kill me? He must have some scheme. The leader of the Golden Crow tribe was silent. His mind spun quickly as he tried to guess what Long Yin's scheme was. However, he could not think of an answer even after thinking for 10 breaths of time. The reason Long Yin didn't kill me must be because he can get more benefits. The leader of the Golden Crow tribe was firm in this thought. He stared at Long Yin with a dark gaze and asked in a deep voice, "What do you want? If you're delusional enough to bribe me and subdue the entire Golden Crow clan, then I advise you to give up on that thought immediately." Long Yin gave a disdainful sneer. The Golden Crow tribe is a sinful tribe. They have already withered to such a state. You think I would like them? Don't measure the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain. Hurry up and swear. The leader of the Golden Crow tribe was skeptical. He reached out to take the jade scroll and check the contents. He felt that Long Yin's scheme and goal would definitely be hidden in this jade scroll. When he used his consciousness to read the heavenly oath in the jade scroll, anger appeared on his face. Endless anger and humiliation surged in his heart. It was not that Long Yin had any scheme or goal. Other than restricting him and the Golden Crow tribe, there was no actual harm. However, the 1,000-word heavenly oath was meticulous, perfect, and covered all aspects. There was no loophole to exploit. If the leader of the Golden Crow tribe swore according to this, then he and the Golden Crow tribe could only give up on the idea. They would never be able to fight for the position of the Dragon Emperor. It would be disadvantageous to the divine fire grotto heaven, unless he dared to ignore the heavens and violate the oath. Otherwise, he would never have the chance to rise again. This was the real reason why the leader of the Golden Crow tribe was furious. Long Yin, you are too vicious, too ruthless. The leader of the Golden Crow tribe held the jade scroll and glared at Long Yin with hatred. His face also became very ferocious. Ji Tianxing said with an indifferent expression, "The fact that you are still alive and the Golden Crow race is not exterminated is already a great mercy. I was the one who made the oath to the heavenly Tao. You can choose not to recite it. I will let you know what true viciousness is." The Golden Crow patriarch was instantly speechless. His anger and grief quickly dissipated. He regained his composure and knew that Ji Tianxing was right. Long Yin's actions were indeed merciful, and he was the loser. He could only choose to obey or die. There was no other way. After a moment of silence, the Golden Crow tribe leader could only pick up the jade strip and recite the heavenly oath in a low tone. Ji Tianxing and Long Yin looked at him quietly. When the chief of the Golden Crow tribe was halfway through his heavenly oath, a series of muffled thunders resounded in the void. Strands of divine light also appeared around him. After he finished reciting the oath to the heavenly Tao, the thousands of rays of divine light that contained the laws around him became even more dazzling. In fact, a wisp of heavenly Tao power even appeared above his head. It was an almost transparent Tao rune that spun gently before disappearing rapidly. Under the power of the heavenly Tao, the Golden Crow tribe leader only felt immense pressure. He was uneasy and his heart was filled with fear. It was only when the divine light and Tao rune dissipated that the uneasiness and fear in his heart gradually faded. How could this be? I just made an oath and it actually triggered the power of the heavenly Tao. Could this be the true heavenly Tao oath? If I violate the oath just now, wouldn't the heavenly Tao really punish me? Those thoughts flashed through the mind of the Golden Crow tribe leader. Instantly, his heart was in a mess, and he became even more fearful. Before he made the oath, he still had a trace of luck in his heart. Even if he violated the oath and rested for a few thousand years before dealing with the divine fire grotto heaven and snatching the position of the Dragon Emperor, he should be fine. However, The appearance of the power of the heavenly Tao and the Tao rune completely shattered his fantasy. He no longer dared to doubt or hope for a fluke. This heavenly Tao oath had already firmly restricted him and the Golden Crow tribe. A wise man submits to circumstances. Golden Crow tribe leader, congratulations, you have survived. Seeing that the Golden Crow tribe leader was still in a daze with a complicated expression, Long Yin waved his hand and shot out a divine light, snatching the jade slip away. At this moment, Ji Tianxing spoke again. Golden Crow tribe leader, you have already fulfilled the first condition. Next, I still want to ask you something. The Golden Crow tribe leader, who was in a daze, came back to his senses and looked at Ji Tianxing with dim eyes. Ji Tianxing asked, about 18 years ago, have you ever seen a human youth? Regarding Wuhan's situation, he briefly explained it. After the Golden Crow tribe leader finished listening, he shook his head expressionlessly. I have never seen or heard of him. Ji Tianxing stared at him sharply and observed for a moment. After confirming that he was not lying, he turned and left. Chief of the Golden Crow tribe, we'll meet again. Long Yin glanced at the chief of the Golden Crow tribe and left after saying that. The two of them flew side by side and disappeared into the void after a while. Looking at the direction they left, it was obvious that they were returning to the Dragon Realm. The Golden Crow tribe leader stood in place and muttered with a frown. They left just like that? Long Yin really let me and my tribe go? Until now, the Golden Crow tribe leader still found it hard to believe. This unexpected result made all the mental preparations he had made previously go to waste. Not long after, the Blue Scorpion Supreme Being, who was hiding tens of thousands of kilometers away and secretly observing the situation, flew to the Golden Crow tribe leader's side. Swoosh! Arriving in front of the Golden Crow tribe leader, the Blue Scorpion Supreme Being silently sized up his expression. He hesitated for a moment before saying, Big brother, I'm sorry. In fact, the Blue Scorpion Supreme Being also thought that Long Yin would kill the Golden Crow tribe leader. However, he did not expect that the two of them did not even fight. Long Yin only forced the Golden Crow tribe leader to make an oath and then turned and left. This was unexpected and had no choice but to bite the bullet and explain to the Golden Crow tribe leader and apologize. However, before he could finish, the Golden Crow tribe leader raised his hand to stop him. You don't have to explain. I understand. The Golden Crow tribe leader expressionlessly glanced at the Blue Scorpion Supreme Being before turning and leaving with a cold expression. He did not return to the Divine Tree Star, but instead flew in the direction of the Dragon Realm. Seeing him like this, the Blue Scorpion Supreme Being knew that he had left a gap in his heart and would remember this debt. The Blue Scorpion Supreme Being hurriedly chased after the Golden Crow tribe leader and explained, Big brother, things are not what you think. I would never harm you or leave you behind. The Golden Crow tribe leader had no intention of stopping and said indifferently, It has already happened. What else is there to say? You want to live and fight for the position of Domain Master of the Scorpion Galaxy. This is your choice. You're not wrong. I was wrong. I should not have trusted you so much and entrusted my life to you. The Blue Scorpion Supreme Being could no longer refute and could only change the topic. Big brother, it's fine even if you don't forgive me. However, you are still injured and cannot travel through the void right now. You should go to the Divine Tree Star to heal your injuries first. It won't be too late to return to the Dragon Realm after your injuries have healed. Chapter 39:07. No matter how Blue Scorpion Supreme Being tried to explain or persuade him, he chased after the Golden Crow tribe leader for 1,000,000 miles, but he still could not obtain the Golden Crow tribe leader's forgiveness. In the end, the Golden Crow tribe leader left expressionlessly. He dragged his heavily injured body and disappeared into the depths of the void at a leisurely pace. Blue Scorpion Supreme Being remained where he was. He looked in the direction the Golden Crow tribe leader had left, his face filled with hatred and unwillingness. Damn it, 3,000 years of friendship ended just like that? Without the help of the Golden Crow tribe and the deterrence of a peak godly king, how will I compete for the position of Star Zone Master? Over the past 3,000 years, Blue Scorpion Supreme Being had been able to stand out in the Scorpion Star Zone and become one of the two overlords. His hard work and schemes were only part of the reason. More importantly, he had become friends with the Golden Crow tribe and the Golden Crow tribe leader, a peak godly king. But now his many years of hard work had gone down the drain. The Golden Crow tribe would no longer be his backer and help. If that powerful enemy knew about this, how could he continue to develop? They would definitely destroy him and the forces under him as quickly as possible. At this thought, Blue Scorpion Supreme Being was filled with hatred for Ji Tianxing and Long Yin. Damn bastards, it's all your fault. You could have killed the Golden Crow tribe leader, and I could have taken over the Golden Crow tribe and strengthened my forces. But you let him go and put me in a difficult situation. Hypocrites, you will die a horrible death. Blue Scorpion Supreme Being cursed angrily before his anger dissipated. He sighed heavily and flew to the divine tree star to deal with the aftermath. The burial of heaven's sword sped through the void. 3 days later, it left the Scorpion Star Zone and headed straight for the Dragon Realm. Ji Tianxing and Long Yin stayed in the Sword World. One was recuperating while the other was cultivating in seclusion. Ji Tianxing did not have the chance to fight with the Golden Crow tribe leader on this trip to the Scorpion Star Zone, nor did he test the true power of the burial of heaven. However, he did not feel that it was a pity. There would be plenty of opportunities in the future. After this trip to the Sky Scorpion Star area, his foundation of the God Tao had become much more solid. He had also gained some new insights. His cultivation base had reached the peak of the 8th King God Realm. Everything was ready, and the conditions were ripe. Thus, he entered the distorted space-time to cultivate in seclusion, seizing the chance to break through to the 9th level of the God King realm. Long Yin stayed in the world inside the sword. He randomly found a place with abundant spiritual energy and consumed a divine pill to heal himself. His injuries were rather serious. Although they did not endanger his life or his divine path foundation, it was not something that could be healed in a short period of time. According to his estimation, he would need to recuperate in the Divine Flame Grotto for at least 10 years before he could fully recover. The void was always dark and cold, and one could not feel the passage of time. Half a month passed quickly. The burial of heaven crossed the void and returned to the vicinity of the Dragon Realm, stopping in the void. Ji Tianxing had already been in seclusion for 25 months in the distorted space-time of the Divine Pagoda. In more than 2 years, he had broken through to the 9th level of the Divine King realm 3 times. Unfortunately, his bottleneck was too stubborn. All 3 attempts ended in failure. Ji Tianxing could only stop his seclusion and fly out of the distorted space-time and the world inside the sword. Swoosh! He appeared in the void, opened the world inside the sword, and awakened Long Yin. Long Yin left the world inside the sword and appeared in front of him. He looked at him with some confusion. Long Tian, why did you stop here? Aren't you coming back to the Dragon Realm with me to the Crimson Dragon continent? Ji Tianxing shook his head and smiled. The Luwu clan and the Golden Crow clan have been dealt with. As long as the 2 clan leaders are still alive, they will not do anything to you because of the heavenly law oath. You can go back to the Divine Flame Grotto and recuperate in seclusion. I still need to go to the Crimson Dragon continent to continue my investigation and find Wuhan. Knowing that Ji Tianxing would not be returning to the Crimson Dragon continent, Long Yin looked regretful. We brothers have not seen each other for more than 1,000 years. Now that we have finally reunited, you are leaving? Forget it. I know you want to find your nephew as soon as possible, so I will not keep you. Once you find your nephew, we can have a good reunion in the future. Of course. Ji Tianxing nodded with a smile. Long Yin suddenly thought of something and exhorted, that's right, the situation in the Crimson Dragon continent is very stable. The Sacred Dragon Emperor is the strongest, and there has not been any trouble in the past 1,000 years. From what I know, the Sacred Dragon Emperor had already gone to the outer domain a few hundred years ago to find an opportunity to break through to the God Emperor level. I'm afraid you won't be able to see him in the Sacred Dragon continent this time. Ji Tianxing had already thought of this and explained, it's okay. Even if his real body is in the outer domain, He will definitely leave a clone in the Sacred Dragon Continent. It will be the same if I go to his clone to find out more information. All right. Long Yin nodded slightly. He was still a little worried and asked, "That's right, you don't have much of a relationship with the Sacred Dragon Emperor, right? Also, you don't seem to have been to the Sacred Dragon Continent and are not familiar with the situation there. How about this? I will go with you." Ji Tianxing hurriedly waved his hand to dissuade him. "No need. You should return to the Divine Fire Grotto Heaven and recuperate in peace. With my current abilities and methods, I can do whatever I want in the Dragon Realm without any danger. Moreover, the Dragon Realm is like my home. No matter which continent I go to, it will be like going home." Long Yan's eyes lit up, and he hurriedly nodded in agreement. "That's right. That's right. The Dragon Realm is your home. No matter how long you leave or where you go, as long as you return to the Dragon Realm, you will be home. Brother, you go to the Sacred Dragon Continent first. I will go back to recuperate in seclusion. When my injuries are healed, I will contact you again. Then, we will leave the Dragon Realm and travel the outer domain to find an opportunity to break through to the God Emperor level and investigate the secrets of the 5 God Emperors." Long Yin did not have much attachment to power. He only wanted to fulfill his responsibilities and protect the peace of the Crimson Dragon Continent. He wanted to protect the billions of people who lived and worked in peace. Apart from that, his biggest dream and goal was to investigate the secrets of the 5 God Emperors and find an opportunity to break through to the God Emperor level. That was his final goal. Ji Tianxing also understood this point. He smiled and extended his fist, bumping it against Chu Li's fist. "All right, we have a promise. We will explore the mysteries together in the future." The two brothers bumped their fists, looked at each other, and smiled. Then, they bid each other farewell. Long Yin broke through the space barrier of the Dragon Realm and returned to the Crimson Dragon Continent. Ji Tianxing controlled the burial of Heaven's Sword and continued to fly through the void, rushing to the Sacred Dragon Continent. 10 days after the two separated, Long Yin returned to the Divine Fire Grotto Heaven in the Crimson Dragon Continent. After dealing with government affairs, he went into seclusion to recuperate. Ji Tianxing also broke through the space barrier of the Dragon Realm and stepped into the Sacred Dragon Continent. At this time, the Golden Crow clan leader, who was seriously injured and weak, returned to the vicinity of the Dragon Realm. He also broke through the space barrier and returned to the Crimson Dragon Continent. He returned to the Grotto Heaven in a very low-key manner and went into seclusion to recuperate. Of course, before he went into seclusion, he issued an order to the Golden Crow clan. From now on, they were to know their place and not attack the Divine Fire Grotto Heaven. Book Guest House Reading Website.